Watch this vidcast or I'll gouge your eyes out.
Welcome back to Ghostman and Rivera's Horror Show podcast.
I'm Mike Ghostman Pickle.
And I'm James Rivera.
We're going to do another special today. We've been doing special podcasts all October where every week we tackle a different subgenre because we're doing the subgenre challenge on our Horror Show page. So we decided to tackle different subgenre each week. And this week we're going to tackle found footage. And what better guest to have along with us to discuss it with us for a little bit, but Adrian Tofei, the director of Be My Cat, a film for Anne. He was on the podcast before, and we'd like to welcome him back.
Welcome back,
Hi,
Adrian.
thank you. Hi, thank you.
And he's very busy right now. He's doing his own releasing and distribution of his DVD of Be My Cat. So we really appreciate him coming on the show during this busy time.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. And as I was just telling you before recording, like it's like really crazy just being by yourself and doing the job on an indie film that a team should do.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was just telling like, yeah, I don't think like after this podcast, I will be able to do too many more podcasts because literally when I start to work on my next movie as well, I will get even more busy. So yeah, crazy.
Well, with you, we're just going to discuss a couple things. You asked us to watch a couple things. And then after we talk to you, we're going to dive into the whole history of found footage films. But what's the first thing you'd like to discuss that you asked us to watch?
Yeah, so you my three films were the Blair Witch Project and the short film. I'm not sure if it's the video, the Alien
Autopsy.
Alien Autopsy, and then I said let's talk about Exhibit A, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So I think you've already, even before me telling you about them, you've already seen the Blair Witch Project, and I think also Exhibit A, or not. I think also Exhibit A, you've seen it before me saying it.
Exhibit A was actually the first time watch as a recommendation for.
I'm happy then. That I could put. Like it's that movie. It's really special. Well, I would say I don't know. Like I would say. Since you are asking me,
let's start with the Blair Witch Project.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because
this seems to be like I guess the found footage genre has existed before the Blair Witch Project, but that was the one that really kind of gave it a big takeoff. And from what I understand, that was a big influence on your career. Can you elaborate a little bit about how that movie affected you when you saw it?
Well, when I saw it, I don't remember when I saw it. I was impressed by it. You know, I only know I saw it on TV. I was like a teenager or something like that, and I saw it in a TV guide, and it was rated there 4 stars out of 5. You know, and back then I was like, since I didn't have internet, and in Romania there were no DVDs to buy or to rent or blah blah blah, especially in my hometown, and also. It was right after the revolution, and all the theaters were like totally like nothing was working. So the only way to watch movies was on TV. So I was buying a TV guide, and I saw there, Blair Witch Project, 4 stars out of 5, must be a great film. So I just watched it, you know. And I remember impressing me, but I wouldn't say like hugely or understanding something about the found footage concept, but definitely impressed me. Later though, after I studied acting in college, and I studied a very special method of acting, in which our teacher was the student of the founder of that method. Mm-hmm. Ion Kojar was the founder of that method, and that guy, he had two things, like one method for acting and a method for directing. And in terms of directing, he had this rule that in order for the audiences to empathize with a show, with a theater show, the show shouldn't have any elements whatsoever to remind the audience that it is a show. The people looking at it should feel like, oh my God, like, is this real or just a show? So he was trying to remove all these elements. While at the same time, his acting method was saying that actors, in order for the audiences to empathize with them, they shouldn't act, they shouldn't pretend, they should go through a process of transformation, which is very importantly here, which is, I can't find that word in English, which is impossible to anticipate. They, because if you know what you are going to say and what will happen with you, that's not real. People don't know in real life what they will say in 5 minutes from now. So he said actors should go through a process that is unique, that happens for the first time, that is irrepeatable, and that won't happen ever again. So could this combined with his with his directing method, I thought, oh my God. Then I remembered after studying this in college, and then I remembered about the Blair Witch Project, and I realized, oh my God, like what this guy is saying here in theater, totally independently of the, probably he never even heard of the found footage genre. What he's doing and he's saying here, these guys, Daniel Myrick, Eduardo Sanchez, they did with the Blair Witch Project, the same thing, because they tried to remove all the elements whatsoever. They tried to make that one look like really genuine found footage, and at the same time, because of the way they work with the actors, the fact that they did not force them to use certain lines, that they did not force them on a script, they just had points, you know, this allowed them to go literally, like my teacher was saying, through a process that is really unique and that cannot be anticipated, and that it's irrepeatable, you know, because it's like, it just happened, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then I made a parallel, you know, between my understanding of theater and my experience and the way they did the Blair Witch Project, and I put these things together, and yeah, that's how I ended up making my found footage film. So yeah, it's a huge thing with the Blair Witch Project, and both with my teacher.
So did you ever think that the Blair Witch Project was real, or have you ever thought that any found footage movie that you watched was real?
No, not I will. The Blair Witch Project. I never thought that the Blair Witch Project is real. That was very obviously a movie, and from the very start, I think I read some stories about it, and I felt it's funny. Like, why would people believe it's real? It's obviously not real. But because it's presented as a movie, so why would it be real? Yeah. When it's not a movie, it says documentary. The genre says documentary, which is why I don't know. Like that's something very weird for me. People watching something, and it's very easy. No matter how real it is, if you go to IMDb, if it doesn't say documentary, it's not real. So I don't understand why people don't check this basic thing. Yeah. I don't know. It's weird for me.
But you have to understand, like in the US, there was a very clever marketing campaign that convinced a lot of people, including me. I thought it was real.
I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to.
Yeah. Because if you, because you have to understand, even when we researched the movie, when you researched the movie, you couldn't find anything that said that they were actors. You couldn't find anything that said it was just a movie. Everything they planted in social media and on the internet said that it was real.
And this was the early days of the internet. The early days of the internet, before
the early days of the internet.
Yeah, before it was before it had everything on it that we know now. And also I think that back then in '99 it was probably easier to control the kind of information that goes on the internet. I think that was probably what made that like a good marketing campaign, is that they were able to control it at the time. So I think the actors had to disappear for about a year or something before they could.
But I'm curious for Michael, because he said he actually believed, like did you learn about the movie from the internet, from the viral campaign?
Yeah.
So the viral campaign got you. It's not like you read it as this is a movie screening on a TV guide the way I did. Okay, the movie came to me differently. I mean, in that section in the TV guide, there were only movies put there, like no such thing as documentaries put there. So I got it in the okay. Then it was a different mental frame for you there.
Yeah, because when I heard it was real, the first thing I did was started researching it. And when I researched it, I couldn't find it anywhere that it was a movie. So
there was no
I went
IMDb.
into it.
There was no IMDb back then. I'm curious.
There was an IMDb, but it didn't
was,
have any other information on the actors. There was no information that said that they were actors. Basically.
I remember. I think I had a very slight doubt. To be very honest, then I don't remember very well. I think I had a very slight doubt about them actually being film students, because they say, oh, these are film students making a documentary and blah blah blah. So yeah, now I remember. I think I was thinking that the guys in the movie that appear in the movie, they are actually the directors and they are the film students. So I still thought that, oh, there is still some reality in it. Of course, I didn't believe that they disappeared in horrible things, but I thought there's some reality at least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what I liked about I think what the reason the Blair Witch had such an impact when it came out is that the way it's filmed, like you said, they almost do nothing to violate anything that looks real or not, because the creepiest elements of that movie come from, somebody standing in the corner, or you walking in the room and somebody standing in the corner, or hearing noises out in the distance or something. There's nothing like that you ever explicitly see. And I think that audiences weren't used to, I don't think audience had seen a movie in years that played on your imagination the way that the Blair Witch Project did.
Yeah, and the fear of the actors was so genuine. Because the way they filmed it, they surprised the actors with a lot of the stuff. So in these moments of the reactions and the fear they felt was definitely real, because the actors did not expect that to happen. They would slip notes.
Yeah. But at the same time, I wanna add something to this. They went with it as actors. Like for example. When she talks in that moment to the camera and she cries, that famous moment, me as a professional actor, having experience with it, I can also see the acting in that, I can see that she, or I can, if not see, I can kind of guess, that she kind of she used the real fear in order to build a moment, I mean, because somebody, even about my own films, just recently somebody commented on YouTube, and they said, like, oh, I really appreciate that you told actresses in advance that everything will be so improvised and this, and that you didn't go Stanley Kubrick on them, like doing psychological violence on the actors just to have a reaction from them, without their consent or something like that, which is true. This is something I never did. Like, they knew everything that is going to be improvised, has been discussed months in advance. And I have the feeling that kind of similar things happened to the Blair Witch Project. I mean, they knew that they will be put in a situation, and I think I read something like that in the contract. They had in the contract, the fact that they will be receiving not that much food. It was so all these things, it's like those game in consensual non-consent in a way, So you consent to be put in a situation that you might not like afterwards, which makes it at the same time professional and ethical for the actors, and gives them freedom to be creative, not to. I'm not 100% sure that this is the way it was worked, but most probably this is the way they work. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any info about this? Sorry, do you have any info about this? Like I think they were informed about a lot of the things, right?
Well, what they would do is the directors would hide in the woods. They would hide, and then without the other actors knowing it, they would slip notes and stuff while they were sleeping. They would slip notes in one of the actors' backpacks. So like when Mike threw the map away, like he would slip that note. The other actors didn't know that he was going to do that. So it's stuff like that. Yeah.
I get it. Wow, that is so cool. I didn't know about this.
Yeah.
And so that's what goes to speaks to the effectiveness of it. And for me personally, I watched it when I was 27 years old. And this is the first movie in my entire life that truly scared me and made me afraid of the dark. And it was a combination of thinking it was real, but also the technique that they used. I'm a very empathetic viewer of a movie. I find it very easy to get in. If a movie is realistic, I find it very easily to get into the characters, to imagine myself in the shoes of those characters. So that's another thing that really scared me. And since then, it's like it opened up the floodgates. I've been scared by a lot of movies since then, but never as a kid.
And the people they planted as well, they interview some people, you know, and some of them were literally planted there. This is something that impressed me so much as well. The actors, they knew that they were going to actually, there's another part to this. First of all, I think they were not told that the Blair Witch Project is a total fictional invention. Okay, they knew that the movie is going to be fiction and all the killing and blah blah blah, or whatever, assumed killing, because we don't know if they were really
the horror. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so they were told that the Blair Witch legend is actually real, the actors. So they were, so they were sent to also interview some people whom they thought they are actual people there living, you know. But those people, they were also planted, not all of them, I think, but some of them were also planted to just be there. So I always imagine, like, oh my God, how it is as an actor to be, for example, there's a guy fishing there. I'm not sure if that guy was planted or not. I imagine, like, oh, your job as an actor is to just go there and fish for 2 days till the actors in their improvisation will finally stumble upon you in the woods. And then you have to say this to them.
So
how inventive this is.
So basically it's kind of I think that made that movie successful. It's kind of a mixture. Well, it was consensual that they all knew that they were getting into something. They were still kind of tricked that the legend was real, and they didn't know to what extent that they were going to be frightened. Like when they would do things, you know, the scenes where they're out in the woods at night and they hear noises in the distance. They knew something creepy would happen. They just weren't sure what it was going to be.
Of what? Yes, exactly.
So it was always like a surprise. And I think that's what keeps that movie fresh, is that for me personally, even if I knew I was in a movie and I knew that I was doing something that I consented to, I would still have a hard time blocking out my fear in the woods in the middle of the night, hearing all kinds of noise. No matter how much I consented and no matter how much I knew that was going on, there would still be a part of me that has kind of a primal fear of what's going on outside.
I also have, when I'm going with my wife at night, at some point we visited some woods, and I realized, like, she's totally okay in the darkness in the woods, and I'm not. I have this fear of the dark of the woods, and damn you, Blair Witch Project, if you traumatize me and I'm not aware. I don't know the reason why, but I'm not aware of this movie being the reason, but who knows?
Could be a subconscious thing.
I was afraid of the dark for the first time. I couldn't walk into dark rooms for a while after seeing that.
I think the dark room was like the fear from my childhood, I think, was about the attic or something about the darkness in my attic, the classical fear that children have.
What's interesting is as different as your movie Be My Cat is from the Blair Witch Project, they both have the type of approach where when you're watching it, it's hard to find anywhere where any of it looks staged. Like for both films, it looks pretty naturalistic what's going on.
With the exception of the blood stain in Be My Cat.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody talked about that, yeah.
Oh,
everything is... Yes, there's a blood stain on the sheets, and but some people said, oh, thanks God I saw that and I realized that it's not real, because I was really stressed that the movie is real. Yeah, I was stubborn. I was very stubborn to not, and also I didn't find good blood good fake blood. I only found a website to order from America, and it was too expensive. And I thought, but at the same time, let's go with this indie style, to have this experience, to put red paint and this and that, to mix stuff and syrup and blah blah blah, and it ended up so bad. Yeah, so sorry for interrupting you. Yeah, so my movie, with the exception of that, and the Blair Witch Project, I don't think if there is anything that I've seen that to show that it's a movie. Yeah,
nothing to shadow the reality.
Mm-hmm.
So a few years before the Blair Witch Project, or earlier in the 90s, there was another video that you asked us to watch that's the Alien Autopsy. Now, I remember watching this earlier in the 90s where it came on Fox. It was around the X-Files days.
Mm-hmm.
And they advertised it as a real alien autopsy. And I know that someone in the CIA believed it was real.
Yeah, I read that article as well. And supposedly, they believed it's real, yeah. Anyway, since you asked me before, you asked me what movie, found footage film, you actually believed it's real. Actually, I don't remember if I believed it's real or not, but I remember seeing pictures when I was very little of this thing. My mom, back in those days, she believed in aliens, had this passion for supernatural, reading all these supernatural newspapers and stuff. So I think that's where I learned about it, or from some documentaries, on TV. And I don't remember really thinking, oh my God, this is real, this is an alien, but it definitely looks so real. At that fresh, it felt real, definitely, to me. And that's why I wanted to talk about this film. By the way, I want to talk about this film because it's I think, I mean, they really managed to trick, not in the way the Blair Witch Project tricked audiences, They really managed to pass something which is made in 1995. Like for so many people, even for professionals in the media, they managed to sell that as real alien autopsy. From literally like how many years ago? From 40s to 90s, like from 50 years ago. That black and white thing, and they didn't get even to today. What frustrates me about that short video, by the way, I want to mention, because there is also other films titled The Alien Optic, including a feature film which was made about the story of that film. So The Alien Optic is a video that people can find on YouTube. It has 21 minutes on YouTube, and on IMDb it says it's 17 minutes or something like. Or no, Wikipedia says 17 minutes. So it's not a feature film. It's not even a short film. It's just a video, And it still frustrates me because that thing is talked in terms of it's mainly known in UFO circles, and people have this passion for the supernatural and for aliens, and some people still think it's real, or they want to believe it's real because they want to believe in aliens. But I would have loved it that movie was more talked in professional film circles, film historians, like directors, film critics, and academics, because that's really a phenomenon, to stage something to that level.
Yeah.
Wow.
That it would trick.
For me, I was skeptical of it because I was skeptical right away because of the way it was presented. It was presented in a fantastical way, so I was skeptical, but then when I started watching it, I was like, okay, this looks really real. So, but I think it's the main thing is it's an incredible feat of special effects as far as practical makeup effects. It looks very wet. It looks very real. But what I saw that wasn't real for me was the strategic times that the camera would blur. Like just when you think you're going to see something really cool in detail, the camera blurs, and the timing of the blurs showed me that it's too convenient. The blurring is too convenient. And when I watched it back, this was weird for me because I thought it was a dummy laying there. At exactly 10 minutes and 38 seconds in, the alien blinks.
Really?
Okay.
So
I didn't notice that.
So for that shot, was it a human in the suit, or how did it blink, or was it a prop that had blinking eyes? I don't know.
I'm not so sure, but there is a possibility that I don't think that was a human. I'm not so sure, but I'm not so sure. I remember reading something about the blinking thing. I think there is a possibility that they intentionally put that blinking in order to cause this type of discussions among UFO fans. Thinking like, oh, but did you see him blinking? I think he was still not dead. He was still alive and stuff like that. I remember as a child feeling bad for the alien, like having empathy, like, oh my God, they are cutting him. And because I watched this impressed me as a child, or seeing very short sequences, or I'm not even sure if as a child I saw the video or I just saw images of it, and already looks so real. Now, after actually I rewatched it, but not all of it, parts of it. After I proposed to you, and I realized something. I realized, oh, you know what's not real for me? How easily they move the camera around. I don't think they had such flexible handheld cameras in the 1940 something. No, they were huge. They were huge movie cameras, and the ones that were handheld, the 8mm, I think. Did they have 8mm camera in the 40s?
I would have to look into that. I'm not even sure.
Maybe they had. And if they had, I don't think they were such smooth with the frames.
Yeah, back then they didn't possess the type of technology for fluid camera movements, and there was no Steadicam. So
So I guess, now looking at it, I can see through these non-realistic things in it.
Well, I had never actually heard of this until you recommended it, and I will say it looked pretty realistic, and I think it mostly has to do with the makeup and the effects. That it looks like there's actually like a living creature on that table that's being operated on, and they do a good job of like aping the look of film stock in the 1940s of how the black and white would look, the graininess and everything. But I think it's like probably like the tricks that you guys mentioned that would give away like the way that the fluid camera movement, something like that. It would definitely give away that it's not real. But I imagine at the time it probably did a good job of convincing a lot of people at the time, that it was real. Especially if somebody in the CIA believed it.
And I also felt that there was a couple instances on the video where the movement of the doctors didn't look realistic. Like they didn't look skilled. It seemed like they were meandering around a little bit and just and now there is also the fact you're right about this, because I mean, and the technology around that you could see around in that place, that doesn't look like you imagine CIA taking an alien. I don't know, you imagine seeing more technology around to dissect and work with that alien, not just those knives and those doctors just let's cut here, let's cut there. I would imagine something much more precise and being done there. But what surprises me is this was earlier before Blair Witch Project, and I was so skeptical of it, and I was so watching for any little thing to make it fake. So why was I able to be fooled by the Blair Witch?
That's a good question.
I don't know. Why do you think? Let's think. I'm curious as well.
I think it was probably seeing it on a big screen.
Yeah.
It was different. I think that anytime, I mean, in my experience, watching any movie on a big screen is going to enhance the effects of whatever.
But when you go to see a movie on a big screen in America, when it's advertised and stuff, I mean, just a second. So the concept was like, oh, we are showing you a feature film. I'm trying to imagine. So it was not that, oh, you were tricked thinking that, to think that was a documentary. No, you were tricked to think that is a feature film released for entertainment, in which they actually used the lost footage of those, like in a way, exploitation. Practically, you are watching the actual exploitation for profit of the possible deaths of some students. Practically, that's what you were aware that you are watching at that moment, right?
Yeah. So that's one of the reasons why I was watching for for it to show something fantastical or to show one of them being killed. So when I saw the movie and it didn't actually show them being killed, so I thought, well, maybe they show this since it doesn't actually show them being killed, so it's not like a snuff film, but you did see what happened to them. And plus, like James said, it was the early days of the internet. So I thought, if you researched something on the internet and you couldn't find anything that it wasn't real, then maybe it was. So I was believing a little too much in the internet back then.
I do think that these days it would be hard to repeat the marketing campaign of what the Blair Witch Project was in the late 90s. Like at the late 90s, they did a whole thing. Like, I don't think you'd ever be able to release a movie now and pull off the same stunt.
You know what? I think it would be possible, but you would have to lie and manipulate on various levels. Like, you would have to advertise the film from the start. You would have to advertise it as a documentary. You would have to have lots of people being manipulated and lied to. Like, to literally sell it, the only way to sell something like today like that, it's as a documentary, like literally. And to not say to anybody that it's not a documentary, you know, that would be the only way. But that to me sounds, by the way, that is something that I disagree with, and I don't like things like this being done. Honestly, I have this thing. It feels to me unethical to do something and to show something as a documentary, and to like I like doing found footage because that's the magic there. The magic is not to lie to people. The magic is for people to come, and people who will know that they will watch a fictional thing, and yet still, although they know, the thing is so real that makes them question their own knowledge, that blows their mind away, you know. To me, that is the goal. Not to actually lie to them, you know. Like, okay, this is a movie, come watch it. And they come after watching it and say, oh my God, is this real? No, I told you before it's not real. No, I don't believe you. You know, that's the magic of it.
Yeah,
that is pretty magical, actually.
I think that's why there was another reason why there was so much of a backlash against the Blair Witch, because a lot of people didn't like being fooled like that.
I think so. Yep.
Definitely.
That's the risk they went into with this.
I'm almost ashamed to say that 10 years later, I was fooled one more time with The Fourth Kind.
The alien one?
Yeah, I thought that was really an alien abduction. I can't believe I let myself get fooled again. It scared the shit out of me.
I've heard a couple of people say that they were convinced that it's real. But again, like you said, that is the magic of movies. Consenting to a lie, knowing that you're going to be lied to, but the magician is so skilled at his lie that even the person who knows they're being lied to isn't sure if there's
there is a scene. There is about the conventions of film, and exactly about this, not about found footage, but about this mechanism, this psychological mechanism. David Lynch talks about it so well in the theater scene in Mulholland Drive.
Okay.
There is the musician on the scene and comes, and they say everything is fake, nothing is real, you know. And yet, although he explains that nothing is real, we see somebody singing at some point, and then he doesn't move his mouth, and the singing continues, which is obviously they are telling us that he was not singing. There was in the speakers there was music, but then a woman comes and she sings so passionately, oh my God, and you see the girls in the audience is crying, and even you feel like crying, and then at some point you realize it was not her singing, you know. So practically David Lynch is telling you, like, exactly talks about this, like the movie. We are telling you that this is a movie. We are telling you that you are coming to see something fictional, but we are going to be so good and so real that we are going to totally take your mind away, and you are going to forget about this.
One thing I think that David Lynch did say, and I'm glad you brought that up, is you mentioned that while movies themselves are essentially a lie, the emotions and the feelings behind the movie are true, even if
that's another interpretation. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think that's like,
interesting.
so like in the movie, like where you say, they know that they're being lied to, they know that they're being fooled, but they're so moved by it. They're so moved by what they're seeing anyway, because
I
it's
see.
beautiful. And Mike actually just watched that movie on the big screen last week at a drive-in.
Yeah. Wow. Interesting.
Yeah. Mulholland Drive, so good. That's a great scene too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And about, by the way, another movie that it was not on my list, but I can quickly mention it because it just reminded me about that film. I think it was called Opération Loon in French, or Operation Moon. It was a movie showed as a documentary that said that Stanley Kubrick faked the moon landings.
Mm-hmm.
And it was presented as a documentary, and literally because of that, so many people now around the world actually believe that and it was a joke, you know, it was made as a joke, that documentary.
Yeah. So another one we have to get to is Exhibit A. This was a found footage film that I'd never heard of, that you suggested to Mike and I.
Yeah.
And I could see why you like this, or this might have been an influence on you, because holy fuck, is it realistic? And man, did this movie get under my skin and make me feel really, really uncomfortable.
And beyond that, did you see the huge potential for found footage beyond the horror and beyond the exploitation?
Oh, yes.
Oh my God. I mean, just the way it gets to you, and on a personal level, the final scene,
Yeah, I had a hard time looking at it.
It was a riveting family drama for most of the movie, and it didn't become horror until that last scene. Mm-hmm. But the tension ratchets up through the whole thing, because it opens up, it tells you that it's a videotape from a murder scene, but you don't know who's going to murder who, what's going to happen, and you have no idea from the beginning, because there doesn't seem to be anything wrong with any of the family. They seem to be a perfectly normal family. And then you see things slowly start to fall apart. And even though I knew 100% that this was not real from the beginning, it didn't stop it from disturbing me just as much. Especially since I have kids, you know.
What I found disturbing about this movie is there's a documentary on Netflix right now. I haven't watched it, but I know it's about a man who killed his wife and his 2 daughters, and I read some details about it, and it kind of disturbed me. Then watching this movie right after that, after I just read about that, I think what the movie did for me is it kind of made me understand and illustrate how these situations happen, because this is something that happens on a regular basis. You hear about it on the news, and it never makes sense that some father goes off and kills his kids and his wife, or he ends up killing himself after doing something like that. I feel like this is like such a common occurrence, and it's something that I've never understood how it could happen. This movie illustrated just how exactly a loving father and a family that really cares about each other could disintegrate and end up in murder. And it all seems so real, so realistic. The way that forgot who the lead actor was, the way that he
David Cole, I think.
Yeah,
something with Cole.
He has this kind of desperation where you know that everything is falling apart around in his life, but he is so desperate to put on the show that even as things are going completely bad, he just gets happier. Come on, let's dance, let's hang out. The way that he tries so desperately to cover up everything falling apart seemed very realistic, and I think the movie just demonstrated to me how these situations could just happen. Even though it seems kind of unthinkable, and the movie made it thinkable.
Yeah, there's not one moment that took me out of it at all. So I related to it in a very special way, because I have a son and a daughter about their same age. We have a goofy little family like that, and we act like they do. And then I related to it as far as, because I went through a serious back injury, so we ran into some serious financial problems where we didn't think we were going to make the next mortgage payment. So I related to it all the way up to the murders.
Oh my God!
I related to it, and then all of a sudden it turns to the worse, and there's never a point where he just snaps. It's just a slow deterioration of the psyche, you know.
Yeah.
this movie, like after watching Be My Cat, after watching the Blair Witch Project, like long after watching the Blair Witch Project, I started to feel like, okay, I think I rewatched it and it didn't impress me on the second watch, the Blair Witch Project. I think I learned so much. It was a huge influence for me, but it wouldn't offer me much on a deeper level, you know, in terms of talking about the human nature, you know, talking about the things that are deeper about life, you know, and I always felt the need for that. Okay, so this Exhibit A satisfied that need of mine, you know, to see a film that is made realistically in this found footage format for you to really empathize what you see, while at the same time talking about deeper stuff. In this case, this family issues.
Did you see this movie before making Be My Cat?
Yes. I've seen it before making Be My Cat. Yes, I think so. Yes.
Okay. And did
this
influence the level of realism that you were going for with Be My Cat?
I don't think the level of realism. I didn't find, for example, this that much. Another film that I found more realistic was Zero Day. By the way, I'm not sure if any of you watched it.
I haven't seen that one.
Zero Day, with those two students that plan an assault on their school.
I've heard of it. I forgot the title.
So
but I have
that
heard
one,
of it.
the movies that I included in my found footage manifesto, and actually initially I wanted to say, I would like to discuss about these three, but then I say, instead of Zero Day, let's talk a little bit about the Alien Autopsy, because that one is not at all discussed.
Yeah.
And that's why I wanted to talk about that one. But if it wasn't for that, then I would have chosen my three options: Zero Day, because that one more influenced me and in terms of realism, because literally there are these they use these as actors, these actual high school kids, you know, and there are these very long shots and it looks like bad, unprofessional way, you know, them just showing their weapons and talking to the camera, how they prepare, and very minor things that thing really felt real to me. Mm-hmm. The acting didn't feel intense enough. I mean, it didn't feel real on an intensity. Normally, I think it would have been more intense, probably in real life, but maybe not. I don't know, because they are not actors. Probably they couldn't, because that's the thing with improvisation, you know. Because if you are an actor, sometimes you can go with it more, with the things that come to you and with the feelings that come to you. And probably if you are not an actor and some feeling come to you, you might not be able to fully go with it, you know, to really build upon it. So I think that would be the only, sorry, I'm talking about the movie that you haven't seen, but I'm just sure it's saying that thing was with Zero Day. With Exhibit A, I didn't find it that much realistic. To me, it still felt like a movie, actually. But I don't know in what way it influenced Be My Cat. I forgot exactly the specifics. I think maybe on a level of doing both this and Zero Day, like, influenced me in a way on a level like found footage doesn't have to be only this Blair Witch or like straightforward horror film, you know. Like, I can shoot during the daytime, I can laugh, I can have fun. It doesn't have to be the woods, it doesn't have to be the darkness, it doesn't have to be the monsters, you know. It's just these guys walking with their camera in their homes and on their streets. And this gave me the courage that I can do it that way.
You know, I just came to a realization as you were discussing all this, and I don't know why this has never clicked in my head before. I'm starting to wonder, what is it about found footage that has wormed its way so far into the horror genre? Because really, found footage could be applied to almost anything. It doesn't have to be horror, like you said. So I actually kind of blows my mind now that I'm thinking about it. That it's been primarily horror that's exploited this format, this
That is my frustration, because I think if like my found footage manifesto that I wrote, I think in 2013, just before writing Be My Cat, specifically at some point it talks about this, like, because I really think if the found footage went into other genres, it would have also reached more people. I think it could have even reached, it could have been accepted more in the mainstream in terms of quality, like even reaching the Oscars or whatever. But because it was restricted to horror, it was kept into this niche, like, oh, entertainment, but not really valuable for the top critics or for the top academics, you know. They dismissed it. And I'm thinking if they did also more dramas and stuff, but also there is a thing, it's Blair Witch, I think, honestly. I think that's because the one that was so popular, extremely popular, was horror. And I don't think any found footage film that is non-horror reached popularity, huge popularity so far.
I think it's become so conflated with horror that I think if anybody saw a found footage movie, they would assume it's horror right off the bat, even if it wasn't.
Well, plus that there's no other genre that benefits as much from realism as horror.
That's true.
Because if you take such a rich genre like that relies on scares, if you take those scares and add another level of realism to it that people haven't quite witnessed before, I think that's what really struck people's imaginations, and that's why they want to be scared by a found footage film. I mean, there's been other fairly popular comedies and action films that were found footage, but they were just never as effective.
But do you think that I think there might be something else, actually, not only the Blair Witch Project. I'm thinking if there's something actually within the concept itself, the found footage concept. Because in order for some footage, there are two things. First of all, I'm thinking now about that. I didn't think before. So in order for a footage to be found, it has to be lost. In order to be lost, that already kind of invites, oh, why was it lost? Something happened. Okay.
Yeah.
And then there's another question, but a lot of things happen. There's a lot of home footage that is lost, okay? But nobody has any interest to put that in a movie to show it to others, because it's just boring. What can be found, no, what can be lost and found, and at the same time interesting? Something sensational. What are the things that can be sensational in this case? Something really effed up happened, actually.
Yeah.
So maybe there is an invitation to horror from within the concept itself, actually. And there is a second thing to this. When you think of something, discovering, like imagine yourself discovering some footage, going into somewhere and discovering like a lost tape. Wow, there's this expectation, there's this mystery. So there is already mystery applied to it, and mystery and suspense are always kind of essential parts of horror a lot of times. So these combined with this might be an invitation to horror. That's why. Not only what do you think?
I think that makes sense.
Also, I think it's the society's obsession with the true crime and true crime documentaries. Like they've been popular for years and years, going all the way back to like Unsolved Mysteries and stuff like that. So people's obsession with true crime turned into this genre where you could recreate a true crime documentary and make it real and bring the horror to the screen in a more real way, I think.
And I think even a movie like go on.
No, you tell me.
Okay. No, I think a movie like Be My Cat, like the one you made, kind of lends itself to the type of curiosity that would come from people who are into true crime, like Mike said. That's exactly what you see in Be My Cat is exactly the type of thing that would intrigue somebody who's into true crime.
By the way, I'm curious. Have you seen a found footage film that has like I don't know, like a good one that has no horror or suspense or thriller elements whatsoever?
It's the 21 and over movie with the partying kids. That was like more of a comedy, and then Chronicle was an action, like an action drama, but it
still has
but that's
thriller
fantasy. That's fantasy. It's a lot of fantasy in it. Yeah. Oh, okay. So you haven't like.
The only thing I could think of, and this is gonna sound dumb because I know this is more of a mockumentary, is something like maybe Borat. Because
I wanted to ask you about this. By the way,
of it.
There are some mockumentaries which, although they are not found footage, but the found footage fans, they always mention them. You know, like for example, Man Bites Dog. Nobody lost the footage there, you know, and found it. Yet it's so much popular within the found footage fans. Yet other mockumentaries, like I don't know, like that musical mockumentary with the rock band,
a Spinal Tap.
Spinal Tap, yeah. Nobody associates it in any way with found footage, although they are both mockumentaries.
Yeah.
I think that's because of the horror element, just because that one was funny and the Man Bites Dog was horrifying, or what do you think is the reason?
Well, because as I go through the history of found footage films, a lot of films that are in the found footage subgenre are not found footage. They're documentary style, like the Bay and ones like that. And
yeah.
Even the Poughkeepsie tapes, even though it has an element of found footage, but it's a lot of documentary style stuff too. So it kind of bleeds together. Like a lot of mockumentaries, have found footage within them, kind of like that. So I think it kind of bleeds together so much that when people see a documentary style horror movie, they think found footage.
Yeah, I think the two genres are definitely intertwined with each other. I do think that they're kind of.
But some of them never intertwine, because that's why I was thinking like Spinal Tap, for example. Spinal Tap is nobody has. I've never heard somebody to think of it in a found footage way. Although when you actually technically look at it, it's close. It's close. I mean, they just wander with the cameras around, and it's.
I could definitely see that.
What about Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon?
I haven't watched it. Yeah, I heard of it.
It's a mockumentary, but it does have a found footage aspect to it, because some of the footage was found after the documentary crew was killed, but it's presented as a documentary.
But by the way, so, although Borat, because you talked about Borat, I've seen more fans, like not one, probably more than 5 or even more than 10. Like who were joking online after watching my movie and were describing my character like murderous Borat or
murderous Borat.
Yeah, murderous Borat or psycho Borat or something like that. Yeah,
I can kind of see that. That's a funny comparison.
Because of the Eastern European accent, you know, like foreign accent, I think, combined with the shaky camera and all that. But yeah, definitely connections, because otherwise they wouldn't say that.
definitely.
Yeah.
So one thing I did want to mention before you go is so you have a DVD out right now, Be My Cat, A Film for Anne. This has been on Amazon Prime for a while. Mike and I watched it a couple years back, and we actually talked about it on the podcast a couple of years ago. It's finally making its way to DVD. Where can the audience find this movie right now?
Well, they can find it. Just watch it. No, not the DVD. I'm going to talk about the DVD as well. Just watch it. They can find it on my right now on my Patreon account. I have a page there, and for $1 they can watch the movie and also receive other exclusive updates about my work. They can watch it for free and with commercials on Tubi. If they are in the European Union, Tubi works with Hola, not Hola, sorry, no, never Hola. Hola is a very bad VPN thing. Doesn't work actually. It works with Touch VPN. I used it. in the European Union, and they also can watch it starting October 27th, 6 p.m. Pacific time. They can watch it on YouTube for free. There's going to be a live stream together with cast and crew. I will be attending for sure, and I will be interacting with fans. I will be watching practically together with everyone else, and I'll be interacting with people in the chat while watching the movie. So, and other cast and crew might attend that live stream, and that's going to be free. And after that, it's going to be free forever, hopefully on YouTube. And I'm really happy for this because it's very important to be seen by more people. And also, if they want to buy the DVD, they have kind of two options. One is to buy directly from my website the signed DVD. They can order it, or they can order it directly from Amazon.com, Amazon US, the regular DVD, and it has two options with the original cover, the original poster, which I did by myself in Photoshop. It took me probably months to perfect that, to learn to use it and do it. So, and there's another option with the same content, extra scenes, closed captions, everything inside, but with the new poster. The
new poster.
Image went off.
Okay.
A bit. Oh yeah. The other option is with the new cover, with the poster made by Terra Films with the distributor. So
do you prefer your cover? Do you prefer your cover or the ones that the distributor made?
No, I like the one that the distributor made because my cover is it's too. I would say it's a little bit misleading. Or clickbait, I would say, even, because it's too much red, it's too reddish, and with the woman screaming, and indeed there is that torture scene, and the movie is very uncomfortable, but it gives the feeling that this is a type of August Underground thing, like a type of a bloodbath, constant bloodbath, and a lot of gore, and my movie is not that type, it's mostly psychological. So just because of that, because it's misleading, I prefer the other one. Yeah.
Okay.
Would you rather fans buy directly from you rather than Amazon? Because I know Amazon doesn't.
Yeah, Amazon. So if fans buy from, like, for example, it's $15 on Amazon, the movie. So from those money, I only make, like, me and the team, because I also pay a part to the team. We make $3 from a sale on Amazon. From those $15, Bezos makes $12. I make $3. So you can buy Amazon. It's good, but you also support Bezos. And of course, you need support. Times are hard. Like there's COVID times. Of course, he's making more and more and more billions during COVID time. But why not even more?
Yeah, of course. Of course.
Okay. Anyway, I'm joking. You can totally buy from Amazon, because the one, if you
we would prefer people ordered from you, though.
Yes. If they order for me, the price, unfortunately, is higher. It's $30 plus $15 shipping costs. So this is going to be only for people that can afford, because I'm releasing it via Amazon. I don't have the capacity to produce DVDs. It's too complicated, and to do that for me as an indie filmmaker. So I'm just releasing them via Amazon. So practically, when somebody orders a signed DVD, I need to pay for it by myself on Amazon and order it from the US to Romania. And Amazon just gives me a discount, lowering the price. They don't give them to me for free. So I have to order from them, pay for shipping, sign them, and then send them back. So because of that, the signed DVD is more expensive, but indeed, we are left with more money. So me and the team are left with more money. But if people they cannot afford, just go have the one on Amazon. I mean, what can we do? Yeah. Well, yeah.
So please check this movie out, everybody. Like he said, it's going to be on YouTube. It's available on Amazon. If you're a big fan, just get it directly from his site, and get a signed copy. That's so much more special anyway than just having a regular copy. Get a signed copy.
Yeah, and later you can make like huge business with it. Like if the movie literally becomes bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, like, I don't know, that signed copy might be valuable, might value like thousands of dollars, like years later. So
Well,
you'd be doing great business here.
yes,
You'd be
well,
great capitalist as well.
it's definitely a movie with the cult. Its cult and reputation keeps growing as time goes on.
And I think another thing that's special about your movie is that you're so accessible to fans, and that you're active in the groups, and you're so willing to connect with fans like that. I think it makes it a more special experience for them.
No, I love doing that. Yes, and I love doing that, and it's good that I love doing that, because at the same time, this also helps me and helps my career, and also people are happy and everybody's happy in all this relationship. So this is really cool. And I'm not an extrovert person, by the way. I'm an introvert, actually. But this is weird. Like, I'm not so sure why, as an introvert, I actually love connecting with fans so much on the internet. And even when I went to festivals, I loved when people came to me and we interacted and I talked with people. It doesn't stress me. Actually, in other situations when I have to go and deal with people, it can be stressful for me, you know, and I prefer doing things online, not actually going and dealing. But in this case, it's different. I don't know. I think I have the same thing. I heard some actors have. Actually, no, that's a different thing. Anyway.
Well, you are an actor too, so.
Yeah, I'm an actor too. Yeah, but at the same time, yeah, there are a lot of actors who, for example, they are totally expressing themselves, totally okay with expressing themselves in front of a camera, but in personal life they are very shy. For me, I'm okay in front of the camera. In real life, I wouldn't. I don't know. I think it's different. Probably also because if I know that somebody liked my movie and they come to me and to say, "Oh, congrats, I liked your film," I think there's a lot of positivity there, you know.
Definitely.
And I think that takes away whatever anxiety, social anxiety I might have about people reacting in a bad way, you know, when I have to deal with people being rude, being in all kinds of bad ways. So when I know that somebody watched my movie and just comes, all that is removed, and it's only the positivity. And I think this allows me to go to, because of this, in terms of my relationship with fans, I'm actually extroverted. This allows me to be extroverted in this case. Yeah, probably that's the psychological explanation.
Well, because when you make a film and it's an extension of yourself and of your art, and then when people are accepting of that, and it probably makes you much more comfortable to speak to them.
Yeah, yes, and I also, and there's something else. I always feel like giving something back, you know, like, oh, like these people actually, I don't know, they watch the movie and just by just loving it, I just feel this weird connection with these people, you know, like there is somebody there in this corner of the world who just empathize on an emotional level with what I did, you know, and not only with the movie itself, like he really got what I did, you know. It's like I have a family member somewhere in the other corner of the world, you know, that really understands me, you know, because I put so much soul in this. So I feel a very weird emotional connection with fans, and and I like expressing this because I know that this can make them happy as well, you know. So that's why it's a win-win thing, actually, when I connect with fans. Win-win situation. Yeah.
Well, we wanted to thank you so much for coming on the show today, Adrian. We know that you're super busy right now. You're working on promoting your DVD, and you're also working, I believe, in post-production on your next film, We Put the World to Sleep. Hopefully we'll get that as soon as possible.
You know what? Like, I really enjoyed talking.
Yeah.
Before I was thinking like, I'm gonna be honest. Like I was thinking like, oh my God, maybe I shouldn't have said to them that to do this podcast, because I feel like so much stressed with so many things to do. Maybe I did a mistake. But now, once I started talking, I enjoyed it so much, talking again about films and stuff, because, you know, when you work, it's work, it's stress, it's anxiety. And I realize when I talk and with you guys, like there's a lot of, it's relaxed, it's a good energy, you know, and it makes me feel good as well. So I don't regret it at all talking.
Well,
I'm happy.
We enjoyed a lot too. And you're, like I said before, you're one of our best interviews that we've had on the podcast.
All right, thank you so much. And I can come back later as well if you have more things to discuss.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe I don't know. Maybe when we put the word to sleep, we'll be out there or close to be out there or something like that.
Adrian,
Okay.
You're always welcome on our podcast anytime you'd like. If you ever have any ideas, just shoot them our way. We're always open to you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Like, I really appreciate this, man.
Yeah, thank you so much as well. Okay.
Have a wonderful day.
Have a good day, both of you. Bye-bye.
Take care, Adrian.
Well, we hope you just enjoyed that little discussion we had with Adrian Tofei on found footage films. Please check his movie out, Be My Cat, A Film for Anne, as soon as you get the chance. But now it's time to dive into a history of the found footage genre.
And I must say, it's really hard work, but it's really fascinating what we've been doing, like taking these deep dives into these subgenres and trying to find movies we haven't seen before and watch them so we can discuss them. And I'm always impressed with how huge these subgenres are.
Yes.
And I knew found footage was huge, but I didn't realize there was so many notable releases. And there have been well over 500 found footage films made. Now, as we discussed with Adrian Tofei, a lot of them are faux documentaries, kind of mixed with found footage. So because of that, I'm going to go all the way back to 1972. It was Punishment Park. It was more like a pseudo-documentary film filmed in 16 millimeter about a film crew that covers a team of soldiers who are escorting hippies, draft dodgers, and anti-establishment type people across the desert for a type of capture the flag game. And it's mostly improvised. So that was a really early, you know, it was more of the documentary style, but with what found footage has become, you kind of have to go back and see the early beginnings. So the one that became popular was in that same year, 1972, The Legend of Boggy Creek. Mm-hmm. It's another documentary style about a Bigfoot type creature in 1950s Arkansas.
I think before you proceed, I think it's safe to say that like the earliest examples of found footage are more likely to fall into the mockumentary category, because when found footage took hold, it took hold as like a strong subgenre where it stopped mixing things in. It stopped saying, well, it's a mockumentary. It's this. Found footage at some point just became straight found footage. So if you look up the history of it, any other stuff, all the early stuff is going to be found footage incorporated with a mockumentary or some other style of filmmaking.
Yeah, so that's why the first instance of actual found footage is Cannibal Holocaust in 1980, and we discussed that at length on one of our previous podcasts. And for me, I don't consider it one of the main found footage films, because only the last maybe 30 minutes of the movie is found footage. The rest of it is filmed in a standard cinematic style. So, but
I think it plants the seeds, though. The Cannibal Holocaust is not a found footage movie in the same way that Led Zeppelin is not a heavy metal band, but the seeds are already there to proceed forward.
And it does have some very effective found footage on there. Yeah. And a few years later, in 1985, Guinea Pig came out. Guinea Pig, Flower of Flesh and Blood. It's about a man who kidnaps a woman and slowly removes her limbs in an attempt to make her a flower of flesh and blood. And Charlie Sheen actually viewed that this is when it didn't really become popular until 1991. Charlie Sheen got a hold of a copy of it, and he thought it was a real illegal snuff film. And the FBI investigated and everything and had to determine that it was fake. But so that one actually didn't come out and make a splash or anything in 85, but it did become popular in 91. So that was a traditional found footage movie.
And leave it to Charlie Sheen to discover a potential
Exactly.
film.
I can just imagine what kind of conspiracies he's a part of.
Oh, we could get into that another time, but yeah, Charlie Sheen is a big conspiracy theorist.
And then a few years later, we had another one, that, Alien Abduction, the Mcpherson tape. It's from 1989. This was kind of rare because this was thought by many to be a real found footage tape.
Mm-hmm.
It was rare for years because the master tape was actually destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't know exactly why, but in 2003, the director started selling VHS copies of it via email. So that one's really strange, but I haven't seen that one. I need to see that one.
I haven't seen it either.
That's another one that never reached any kind of acclaim or popularity because it was lost for so many years. So I want to check that one out. And then, as Adrian Tofei mentioned, Man Bites Dog, which is more of a mockumentary. It's a film crew follows a thief and killer, and then they slowly start helping him.
Excellent movie, by the way. If you haven't seen it, it's totally worth checking out. Man Bites Dog is very original. A twisted sense of humor is required, though.
I have not seen that one. That's one of my blind spots there.
Oh yeah, Man Bites Dog and Reservoir Dogs and El Mariachi, I believe, all debuted at like the same festival. And it was Quentin Tarantino, Robert Rodriguez, and the director of Man Bites Dog had to defend the use of violence in their film to some kind of panel around the time that these movies were out. So they all kind of made like splashes around the same time.
I see. Well, coming up on 1999, the big one, Blair Witch Project. A year before that, actually, was The Last Broadcast, which is actually an earlier example of what Blair Witch Project is. And a lot of people claim, no, that's the first found footage one, not the Blair Witch Project. It's the first one that introduced us to this style. But it just, plain and simple, it wasn't effective. It's about the search, group of guys search for the Jersey Devil. Mm-hmm. And it does have some very effective scenes, but overall not nearly as effective as the Blair Witch Project, but still a recommended watch for anybody who likes found footage films and wants to dive into the history of it.
You can't argue that one as the one kicking off the subgenres like into overgear, because I know that people like to claim that that's like the real one, not the Blair Witch, but the fact of the matter is that the Blair Witch Project is the one that everything was inspired by. That was the one that really kicked it off.
But what's strange about the Blair Witch Project, a lot of especially the bigger studios, did not jump into the found footage subgenre right away. Mm-hmm. It was still really sparse, much more sparse than you would think. If this, one of the most successful indie films of all time, comes out and makes all this money compared to how much was spent on it, and it was a fluke to a lot of studios and a lot of producers.
And I think a lot of studios and producers didn't think that they would be able to recreate that same level of hype and the type of marketing campaign. I think it would have been too hard for them to reproduce. Yeah, how special that was.
Yeah, they caught lightning in a bottle with the Blair Witch Project. So I can see how that can be confusing for producers. Like, we've never dealt with anything like this before, and that was like a one-time thing. I'm sure it looked like to them like it was going to be a one-time thing. And there was quite a few years before there was another popular one. Now, don't get me wrong, there was a lot that came out, but none notable. Like, if I skip over any that anybody thinks that I'm missing, let me know. But it seems like a lot of filler in between here, because this is a subgenre that can be very easily done. So a lot of smaller producers thought that this was a bankable concept, and it made it they can make a movie for very little money and make a lot of return on it. So that caused a lot of filler. But one thing that was not filler was in 2005, Noroi the Curse. And I can't believe I waited till last night to watch it. It's from director Koji Shiraishi from Japan. Mm-hmm. It's about a documentary filmmaker who investigates unrelated paranormal incidents that end up being connected to an ancient demon called
Having trouble there?
Kagutaba. I got
Kagutaba.
Tongue-tied on that.
That's okay.
But did you watch this one?
I did not get a chance to watch this one.
Well, this one, I understand why you couldn't watch it because we're both trying to cram these movies in. And I watched so many movies, and I was so disturbed. And part of some of these movies I had a lot of fun with, but some of them were like, what am I doing to myself? Because it's so disturbing.
All right, but the genre itself, found footage, invites itself to the type of realism that gets under your skin more so than I think the average horror movie, because with found footage, if you're trying to ape reality or recreate the effect of reality, you're obviously going to have to go for more gut level instincts in the audience.
Yeah. Now, Noroi the Curse is set up more like a documentary because the guy is actually making a documentary, but it is found footage because
they never complete it.
It just, I mean, we'll go more in depth in this after you watch it. I won't go too in depth now because it's definitely worth a full discussion on a future podcast after you watch it. But it's really an effective slow burn mystery where it's riveting every step of the way. It's a very intelligent mystery, very layered, and very patient with the scares. Mm-hmm. Like there's a little bit of underlying menace as he gets closer and closer to this Kagutaba, mm-hmm. And it's slowly it's more like a riveting documentary that's creepy, mm-hmm. And then when the horror kicks in, it just turns completely evil.
Okay.
And it is so dark and so scary, and some of the images will not leave your brain. So that one's definitely a must see. And then a year after that, we had one that we mentioned with Adrian Tofei, Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon, 2006, directed by Scott Glosserman. It's about a documentary crew who follow a killer. And it has appearances by Zelda Rubinstein from Poltergeist and also Robert Englund, the great Freddy Krueger.
This is in line a little bit with Man Bites Dog in terms of what it's going for. But I think it's more lighthearted than Man Bites Dog. It's a less harsh movie than Man Bites. This is definitely one of the found footage movies, the more fun ones. You don't really see the found footage genre. You don't really see too many movies like Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon, because as it is a horror movie, I personally think it's pretty damn funny. When I watch it, there are several things that had me cracking up. So I think this is one of those rare horror comedy found footage movies.
Yeah, very, very funny, very interesting as well. And the guy that plays Leslie Vernon is very charismatic, and they explore like different tropes of serial killers and slasher movies. So they kind of reach into a meta type of film with that. So it's meta, it's clever, it's even scary in parts, and mm-hmm. they manage to be pretty funny and still get some pretty tense, scary moments out of it. So that one's very a real gem. Mm-hmm. And a year later is one of the most disturbing found footage films I've ever seen, the Poughkeepsie Tapes, directed by John Eric Dowdle. And I was not surprised when I found out that John Eric Dowdle also directed As Above, So Below, which we'll discuss later. And he also directed Quarantine, the remake of REC. We'll discuss that later. And he also directed Devil, which is a little small-scale movie that I like. And it's about New York investigators find an abandoned house in Poughkeepsie with hundreds of tapes showing decades of a serial killer's work.
So I saw this years ago. It's a pretty good one. This director seems very dedicated to sticking with this subgenre. Unlike most filmmakers, I don't know anybody else who has made that many movies within the same category.
And by the way, he's very good at it. I mean, as raw as Poughkeepsie Tapes was, that's how polished As Above, So Below was.
Okay, we'll get to that later, and this is why I like the Poughkeepsie Tapes quite a bit more than As Above, So Below. But we'll get to that later.
Okay, and then we get in 2007, in the same year, we get another one that we just discussed with Adrian Tofei, Exhibit A, directed by Dom Rotheroe. Mm-hmm. This one is deeply disturbing, 100% realistic, and it's just a slowly deteriorating family drama.
Yeah.
And it has no hints of horror throughout the most of the thing, but then when the tension starts ramping up, it's palpable all the way to the end, till that last disturbing scene that I still can't get out of my head.
I'll put it this way. I had a hard time looking at the screen the last 10 minutes of the movie, and I had to calm myself down, slow my heart rate, and remind myself that what you're watching is not actually real. It was staged to calm myself down a little bit.
Well, the way they did this Descend into Madness, like you never know when, like I was saying, you never know when the murders are going to happen or who's going to get murdered. And then when it happens, it's worse than you think, and it doesn't seem to come out of the blue. Mm-hmm. And there's at least 3 or 4 scenes before that where you think, oh, this is it. Mm-hmm. But he doesn't do it. Oh, this is it, but he doesn't do it. Mm-hmm. So that it makes that last scene that much more like
effective.
Yeah, it's almost surprising, even though you know it's coming, but they somehow make it still surprising because it's such a subtle change.
Yeah,
because he's a desperate man trying to do the right thing, mm-hmm. and he just makes too many wrong decisions that take him down a bad road, mm-hmm. and it just culminates in probably the most disturbing scene I've seen out of all the movies this week.
Yeah, definitely a difficult one. The next ones are more fantasy, aren't they? Or not fantasy, but they're a little not so quite so heavy-hearted.
Yeah, so this one, it seems like, okay, you know how there was a little lull, there wasn't that many notable found footage films right after the Blair Witch, and then in 2007, Paranormal Activity was coming up, but even before that, even before Paranormal Activity, you had Exhibit A, you had REC, and REC is actually the one that John Eric Dowdle remade with Quarantine. I actually saw Quarantine first, and I went back and saw REC, and Quarantine, I don't know why people shit on Quarantine, because it's actually a shot-for-shot remake, and it's very good. But when you watch the original, you're like, okay, that's scary. It takes this, it's the same scenes, it looks like the same location, the same things happen from scene to scene, but it's just more raw, more scary. It's from Spain. It's directed by Jaume Balaguero and Paco Plaza.
So I've only seen Quarantine, and I've explained it in the past on the podcast. Every time I tried to watch REC, it's always been an English dubbed version, and I can't find one with the original language and the subtitles, and I'm not going to watch that movie dubbed in English. There's no way I'm ever going to watch that movie dubbed in English.
Watch the original version, because if you watch it dubbed in English, you might as well be watching Quarantine.
Yeah, that's what I figured, so that's why I had turned it off. But with you mentioned that like before when the Blair Witch Project came out, there was like kind of a lull, but there were still releases. But it was like after Paranormal Activity, you saw more. I kind of feel like Paranormal Activity is like the long delayed follow-up to the Blair Witch that studios were waiting for to confirm that this was not just a one-off film that became popular. And I think it took 10 years. And it came out in 2009, even though it was made in 2007, it kind of went around the circuit and then like slowly opened up to different theaters. And I think it took that film's blockbuster success to confirm to studios like, okay, it wasn't just the Blair Witch Project where these movies could be successful. It's a whole, like you could do a lot more like this and have that level of success, because Paranormal Activity was kind of a huge movie. And I think that's why the floodgates opened up a little bit more. It was confirming what studios were slightly skeptical about when it comes to the Blair Witch Project. It kind of confirmed that, okay, it is okay to go full speed ahead with all these movies and expect some kind of profit.
Yeah, and the thing is, leading up to Paranormal Activity, you had the Poughkeepsie tapes, Exhibit A, REC. So it's like you see a little boom starting, but nobody knew about these movies yet. Nobody knew about the Poughkeepsie tapes yet. Nobody knew about REC yet. And nobody knew about any of this. And then we get the great George Romero, also in 2007. He did Diary of the Dead. It's about film students who run into real-life zombies while filming horror movies. So I think I think George Romero was ahead of his time, and he's seen that what a valuable subgenre that was to explore. So the greatest zombie filmmaker ever realized that it was going to be a big boom right before Paranormal Activity.
And if I must say so myself, Diary of the Dead is a damn good entry in the you would call Of the Dead, the Romero of the Dead zombie franchise. And I think that Romero saw the potential in it because it's perfect for what he does. It's already, his movies are already going for a certain sort of level of realism, a certain type of certain social commentary. It only makes sense that eventually, that if zombies were actually real, somebody would film it, or somebody would have some kind of footage of when the outbreak started or how it happened. So it was like the perfect marriage of his subgenre that he was the king of, zombies, to the found footage subgenre. And that's the great thing about the found footage subgenre. It's the type of subgenre that requires you to tack on another subgenre to whatever it is, because the found footage is just the format. The horror can come in any variety. It could be realistic horror, it could be supernatural, it could be psychological, and Romero expanded it by proving it could also be zombies, which I don't think a lot of people would ever think to make a found footage zombie film. That's just truly an innovative concept when you think about it.
Yeah, and it wasn't that bankable of a concept when he made it.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't like he was trying to capitalize on something that was already bankable. He just capitalized on something that he seen was going to be effective. But when you look back on it, like, it's a really good movie, really a lot of fun. But the realism isn't quite there through some of it, because the acting isn't bad. It's just a little stiff, a little like you can tell it's a low budget.
Mm-hmm.
And especially it looks bad when you look back on what came out the same year. Like the Poughkeepsie tapes was a lot more real, a lot more effective. Exhibit A was a lot more real, a lot more effective. REC was a lot more real, a lot scarier. And then also I have to mention before we move on that REC 2 came out 2 years after REC, and they continued it with 3 and 4, but none as effective as 1 and 2. So on 1, it was these infected zombie people. And then in 2, you realize that it's not zombies, it's actually supernatural. So that brings a supernatural element into it. It made it fantastical, but it still maintained the raw scariness of the first one.
I think one of the reasons that Diary of the Dead lacks this, and it probably has a little bit more polish than it should, is because by the time that came out, Romero had already spent decades making films, making masterpieces, but in the traditional way that you would make a movie, in the traditional approach. And as much as he's going for a level of realism, as much as I do like Diary of the Dead, I could see that it's the work of a filmmaker who has to work to get rid of their cinematic flourishes, who has to work to try to make it more realistic. So I do like the movie quite a bit, but I do see the flaws in that regard. It might have been that Romero was probably a tad too polished for found footage.
And you can tell he's a really, really good filmmaker experimenting with a subgenre he wasn't familiar with.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
He's a great filmmaker, so it was still really good. It's just the realism wasn't quite there. But the realism for me is definitely there with most of the Paranormal Activity films, actually. So the first Paranormal Activity film came out in 2007. It was a huge hit, directed by Oren Peli. It was about a couple taunted by a demonic presence. And then a few years later, in 2010, was part 2. It was about a family taunted by a demonic presence. Part 3 was in 2011, a year after that, and it was a prequel that was 18 years prior to the first. And then the fourth one was 5 years after the first one, and it's about a family taunted by Katie and a demonic presence. And this is where they first introduced the Xbox Kinect, which I thought was a very good aspect that they continued to use through the later ones. Number 5 is my personal favorite. It's not a lot of people's personal favorites. It's the marked ones. And the evil target's a young Mexican boy. And then they kind of went down in quality after with Ghost Dimension Part 6, where they have a special camera that sees spirits and it continues the mythos. It does well with continuing the mythos and expanding the story a little more, but you don't want to see these spirits. Paranormal Activity is something where the spirits are unseen largely, and if you do see them, they're possessing one of the characters. So I think that's where the Paranormal Activity franchise it's most effective is what you don't see. And
I agree with you. I went to go see Paranormal Activity. I remember when it came out, it had to be requested to play at my theater, and it was sold out. And man, it's one of the best experiences I've ever had in a movie theater, because it's not like the Blair Witch where people knew going in that they were going to go see a movie, but damn if people didn't act like they weren't aware that what they were watching wasn't real. It had such a profound effect, and it really kicked off. And I really love that it replaced torture porn.
Yeah,
I really love that it kind of knocked that back a few pegs. Here's my biggest criticism of this franchise is that it's not that they keep making sequels or they want to expand the mythology, but I feel the found footage aspect of this series has kind of worn itself out, where I'm starting to feel like all this mythology can't just so happen to be found footage. There just so happens to be found footage for every little incident, for every family, no matter what point in time, where you already have the mythology established and everything. So at this point, I think they can make a Paranormal Activity movie and still explore the world without forcing something on it that's starting to seem more unnatural. The more movies they make in the series, the more the found footage is starting to really stretch itself to me. Where I think that you want to contribute, you can go ahead, explore the mythology, but at some point you can't say everything was recorded at all times unexpectedly, just at the right moments for everybody to see just the right thing. That's where it stretches. It's not the found footage. It is the found footage. It's not the ghosts. It's not the paranormal elements. It's the fact that everybody's recording everything at all times.
Well, I do think that a handful of these movies, like most of them, are really good. Mm-hmm. There's more of them that are really good than are bad. So, but I think it showed a lot of filmmakers after this how to do an effective found footage film. It gave them more tools to do it, like especially the static shots, the security camera shots. Then you get this new aspect of found footage where it's a large, wide frame, and you're constantly searching the frame for something scary. Mm-hmm. So it's that, and plus, I think it showed actors how to act in a found footage movie. Because it almost seemed like some people, I think in two, even more than one, it made some people think that it was bad acting, but it wasn't. It's the absence of acting is what it was. Mm-hmm. And I think this was seen more in a lot of later found footage films. Like actors looked at that and they say, okay, I have to feel this rather than portray say these lines or portray this scare. Mm-hmm. I have to act like myself. I have to be a real person.
It kind of feels like those type of like intense method Oscar performances don't work within the context of found footage. Found footage works best when the people in it don't even seem like they're acting. It just looks like they're living their lives. That it's not forced, because I mean method acting is an incredible art form, but it's not something that lends itself to the found footage format.
Like part two was your typical white suburban family. Mm-hmm. And they acted just like that. I know people exactly like that, who talk like that, who act like that, who carry on their lives day to day like that. And I thought 5 had the same element, but with a Mexican family. Yeah. I know people like that. I know people who act like that, who carry themselves like that. So it's mm-hmm. I think that's what Paranormal Activity showed actors, that it's the absence of acting where the magic comes in found footage.
Definitely a breakthrough.
So once Paranormal Activity broke through in 2007, J.J. Abrams put together a movie called Cloverfield in 2008, directed by Matt Reeves. Matt Reeves went on to direct Let Me In, a couple Planet of the Apes movies, and he's doing The Batman right now. Mm-hmm. And it's writer Drew Goddard, who went on to write and direct Cabin in the Woods. And it's about a group of friends in New York who attempt a rescue mission while a giant monster attacks the city. This one felt like Day of the Dead to me. Some of the actors were really convincing, really cool. Some of the camera movements were really convincing and really cool, but some of the actors weren't as convincing. And some of the camera movements weren't as convincing as the others. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and this really started pushing the boundaries of how real it can be and how hard it is to justify a camera being in someone's hand and pointing at the action.
Yeah, I agree. Although it did add something, I don't think that before Cloverfield anybody would have ever conceived of that, hey, you can use found footage to make a giant monster movie too. And in fact, it's kind of a brilliant way to cheat a monster movie because you never have to show it the way you would as if you were filming a regular film where you have to have your money shot where you see the monster in full and everything. Since it's a camera, you have the perfect excuse only to see it in glimpses and to kind of like cheat the budget. So I think the concept is innovative and I think a lot of the execution works. However, it's one of those movies that's hit and miss, like you said. There are parts of it that really work for me and parts of it that really don't work. But I kind of appreciate it as an experiment of taking found footage to its next logical step. Let's make it even more fantastical with a giant monster. So I think it has its positives and its drawbacks as a movie.
It's really good. It just takes you out of it from time to time. You can tell it was made by talented filmmakers.
Perhaps too talented. I think that might be the flaw. Some of you people making your found footage movies, you polished filmmakers, try to take a little bit of your polish out if you want to make it more real.
Yeah, you have to forget everything you learned about making a movie, and you got to make it a whole different way than you were ever taught. That goes from the cast, the crew, the director, the writer. There has to be something else, another era of realism about it, and so you have to end up doing it a different way. So much so that I'm intimidated by the found footage subgenre.
Yeah.
A lot of filmmakers see it as an easy way to make a cheap movie. But for me, I don't want to just make a cheap movie. I want to make it 100% realistic. If I'm going to do a found footage film, I want it to be 100% legit.
And the way that found footage movies are made is kind of antithetical to the way that people are taught how to make movies, how to block them, how to shoot them, how to film them, how to edit them. Because movies are not made to be found footage for the most part. They're meant to like give the illusion of reality, and there's all kinds of polished tricks that you could to pull this off. Found footage kind of strips all of everything you know away and forces you to rely on more crude methods. So it definitely requires a certain type of talent. It's not the same thing as shooting a regular movie. And I think that people are making a mistake when they think it's going to be easier. I'm like, I don't know if that's necessarily true because all of your knowledge is going to have to go out the door in terms of how you know how to film and how to shoot and how to block a scene.
Yeah, and once a found footage film becomes cinematic, it's no longer believable. Like it's recognizable as a movie.
There is one, and we'll go down way later, that I do think two movies that managed to successfully pull off looking cinematic and found footage at the same time. But that's not something that's very easy to pull off.
Yeah, for sure. So in that same year as Cloverfield, we get another little a smaller movie, but still effective. It's Lake Mungo from 2008. It's from Australia. It's written and directed by Joel Anderson, where strange things start happening when a girl is found drowned in a lake. And a parapsychologist discovers that the girl led a double life. So it's a little mystery and supernatural elements to it. It's very involved, like a documentary style type of movie. And a year later is one that I mentioned before with Adrian Tofei, The Fourth Kind from 2009, directed and co-written by Olatunde Asunsanmi. It's about a psychologist played by Mila Jovovich who unwittingly discovers evidence of multiple alien abductions through her therapy sessions. And one of the things I love about this is it has Elias Koteas. That man does not make enough movies. I love seeing him in a movie, and he's great on here. This one, like I said before, this is the only other movie besides The Blair Witch that I thought was real going in. It scared me and my wife to death. Especially this one part, they show this really blurry footage. It's like from a cop car. It's from a cop's camera on his car. And he goes up to check on this house. and he sees an alien come down and abduct this little girl. And the way he screams, I'm getting goosebumps right now. The way he screams, I'm thinking it was real. Ah, scary as hell.
I'm not gonna name names, but I know a couple of people who still think this movie is real.
Really?
Yeah, I'm not saying, but I do know a couple people who are convinced it is a real movie.
Well,
and it is
on
real.
this one, this writer director found a new way to fool people, which was take actors like Mila Jovovich and Elias Koteas and put them into dramatizations. And then you have the found footage aspect come in when they show them in a dramatization, so you get to see it play out cinematically. But then you're supposed to see the real tapes of the real doctor.
That gives it an extra layer of realism, because most people, for the most part, when they see that, oh, they had to dramatize a few scenes, that means that they had real footage that they just had to fill in the blanks. Where, like, I think that's the psychological assumption on the part of the audience when it comes to that. Kind of makes it seem more real. I'm like, well, why would they use that technique? Why would they use dramatizations if they weren't going to connect it to something real? So that is kind of a brilliant kind of ploy.
Exactly, and just like Blair Witch, that's one of the things that made this a very decisive film. A lot of people came out and said that this was a piece of shit, that it was no good at all. And then people like me came out and said it's one of the scariest movies I've ever seen.
I haven't seen it. I've only heard two things about it: either that it's god awful, or that it's so awesome that, like I said, a couple people I know are convinced that it's real and that they just try to pass it off as a movie.
Yeah, and they hate that. They don't like being fooled, and especially this. Like, are you using dramatizations and stuff trying to fool me? Fuck you. And I gotta admit, the director was pretty ballsy of trying to fool everyone, because he actively tried a campaign to prove to everyone that this was real.
You have to, especially after Blair Witch. It's hard to do that as organically without forcing it so hard.
Yeah. So then a year after that, in 2010, we got The Last Exorcism. Now, this one was fairly popular. It was pretty good. It was directed by Daniel Stamm, who also did 13 Sins, another really good movie, not found footage. It's about a troubled minister who agrees to allow his final exorcism to be filmed. There's a few really standout scenes in this one, really good, especially where the girl, it's a contortionist, bends over backwards, and you think it's the actual little girl that's being possessed. It's a decently effective exorcism film, pretty effective found footage film. But the thing with this, when I discovered movies before this, and then movies that I watched after this, it just pales in comparison to some others.
Okay, that makes sense.
As far as realism and the disturbing elements of it, it was almost like a light version of a found footage movie.
I could definitely see that being the case.
I mean, it should have been deeply scary and unsettling, but it was actually kind of fun. And
I didn't personally find it very scary. I'll say that.
Yeah. It was more fun than scary. But another much more effective film came out that same year, Troll Hunter from 2010. It's a film from Norway, written and directed by the great Andre Overdahl, who directed Autopsy of Jane Doe and Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. It's about a group of students who investigates a series of bear killings and discovers it's giant trolls. And a real standout in this is Otto Jespersen. He plays Hans, the troll hunter. This is another one, funny as hell. The troll hunter has a lot of charisma. It's a lot of it is very cleverly funny, and he's like a seasoned hunter, and he's kind of leading these noobs through the forest, and he's kind of mocking them for the way they act and the way they do things.
Kind of the most successful, I think, up to that point, the most successful marriage of horror comedy to the found footage subgenre. Even more, I would say, even more so than Behind the Mask, which is also great.
Yeah, and it's very effective found footage and very cool monsters. These trolls are awesome. All of them are different. There's no two trolls that are the same, and they have these big honking noses, and they're almost comical looking. But the way they move on screen and the way the camera moves, they're still fucking managed to be scary. So you take a comedy horror film that has comedy throughout,
Mm-hmm.
and then you have these trolls where some of them are straight funny looking to look at, and you still manage to make it scary.
Yep.
That's what's most impressive about this movie for me. So that was one that brought a lot of the fun, a lot of the comedy, and the scares.
The next one is awful. In
I
my
don't know
opinion.
I don't know if I changed the order on you. Is Apollo 18?
Yep. Apollo 18.
Now, this is one that I need to see. So,
I thought it was terrible. I went to go see this at the movies when it came out. Nothing about it that I found convincing at all. I was irritated through most of the running time.
well, it's fairly big budget. It's directed by Gonzalo Lopez Gallego. It's a Spanish director. And it's supposed to be the uncovered footage of a mission, Apollo 18, where 3 astronauts are attacked by aliens on the moon.
Mm-hmm. It doesn't work. It doesn't give off the feeling of actually being found footage, and there's a certain kind of staginess to this movie that I detected through too much of the. It really bothered me. It really didn't sit right with me. Where none of this movie worked for me at all. I think it's an ambitious attempt. I think it's cool to try to take the found footage genre into sci-fi horror, which is like another step, which is another big step. Because I mean, think about Alien as a found footage movie. If you found footage of like similar events, that's pretty fucking frightening. So on the surface level, I think it's a great idea. I just don't think that this movie had the execution to pull off something so ambitious and ballsy. However, I do still think that there is a great sci-fi horror waiting to be mined out of found footage. This isn't it, though.
Yeah, like in Event Horizon, they had that found footage aspect in that one.
Yeah, but I think a full-on found footage film, as far as sci-fi horror, could be something effective and original if done right.
So you think this one was given a big budget and put in theaters just because of the concept? Because they thought people would really...
where I kind of feel like this might have just worked better as a straight film. You know what I mean? As just like a straight movie about the subject. As a found footage movie, I don't really think it works at all. Okay. That's just my opinion. It's notable. I've heard a lot of people talk about it over the years, and some people do like it. It has its fans. I'm just not one of them.
Well, later on that year, for me personally, came one of the crowning achievements of found footage films. And I didn't think this when I first watched it. It's Grave Encounters from 2011. It's a Canadian film written and directed by the Vicious Brothers, who are Colin Minahan and Stuart Oritz.
The Vicious Brothers?
The Vicious Brothers.
Okay, that's quite.
And they did another found footage film that's good but not as good, Extraterrestrial, in 2014. They also did It Stains the Blood Red. No, It Stains the Sands Red, Stillborn, and Z. They're the ones that just directed Z. It's about a ghost hunting show similar to Ghost Adventures. It's really close to Ghost Adventures, actually. And the crew locked themselves inside an abandoned hospital that proves to be really haunted. And Sean Rogerson really stands out as Lance Preston on this one. Now, when I first watched it, I didn't take it as seriously because especially the main character and some of the supporting characters seemed disingenuous. They were cheesy. But when I went back and rewatched it, that's where they were supposed to be. They were being who they were because they were putting on a show for the Ghost Adventures TV show. I mean, for the Ghost Adventures, for the Grave Encounters TV show.
So I think it's on the mind.
Yeah, I think part of it is a parody of Ghost Adventures, and that's kind of why it turned me off at first and made me look at it as not a movie to be taken seriously. But when you rewatch it, it's really realistic. It's more realistic than you think. The acting's really good. The scares are top notch, especially the one where the girl in a gown is standing in a room against the wall, and she turns around and her mouth gapes open. I mean, it's CGI, but with the graininess of it, it looks real. So it has really good, solid scares. And people didn't like part 2 and the year later in 2012 as much. It wasn't as good, but still had the same
spirit
of realism to it, and it brought back Lance Preston, the character from the first one. He's still kind of stuck. He's still kind of stuck in the asylum. So that one's a must see in the found footage subgenre. Now, one that's not as much of a must see that a lot of people hate came later on that same year in 2011. Megan is Missing. It's written and directed by Michael Goy, who he directed a bunch of episodes of American Horror Story, a couple episodes of Swamp Thing, Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, and he just directed Mary with Gary Oldman, which got really bad reviews. I haven't seen it yet. But it's about 2 teen girls who are targeted by a child predator on the internet. Rachel Quinn is really good as Megan, and Amber Perkins isn't quite as good as Amy. Now that's one of the, and some of the supporting characters too. Right from the beginning, it feels like a bad movie. There's some bad acting. The actor Amber Perkins that plays Amy, you can tell she's a beginner actress. She can't act that well. She's not really good at being natural at all. But when the horror kicks in, all of a sudden she can act, and you feel that she's in pain. You feel her agony and her fear, and it really turned around for me, and it made it so deeply disturbing by the end because of some of the images that they show. Because it's already disturbing.
Do you think it might have had a bigger impact if it started off with a different level of realism, if the acting from the beginning was as good as it is later?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. But
it was still a bad movie in a different sense, as far as you don't like the way it makes you feel. The first hour of this movie made me feel the exactly same way that I felt when I was watching Kids.
Disgusted?
Kid. Yeah, disgusted, like bad kids being really bad.
I hate that movie, by the way.
Yeah. And it's about this girl, Megan, who's really like a promiscuous type of girl, really troublemaker, really troubled, had a troubled childhood. And she's very sexual, where her friend Amy is very innocent and virginal. So you see a lot of Megan's shenanigans going on, like giving guys head at a party just so they'll let her friend Amy in.
Stuff like that, yeah.
And her describing in detail about a 17-year-old counselor making her give him head when she was 10. So it's just like this stuff that makes you feel dirty and makes you feel depressed that there are really kids out there like this. And then, but you can kind of take yourself out of it because of the acting. And then when the girls are kidnapped, it's Megan that's kidnapped first, and then Amy tries to look for her, and then she talks to the online predator a couple times, and she realizes that that's who done it, and she still falls victim to him. So it's frustrating that this young innocent girl's friend is missing. It's obvious that an online predator took her, and her parents still allowed her to be taken. And then after she's taken, it comes on the screen and says, "You are now going to watch the final 22 minutes of Amy's video camera." And that's when the movie becomes thoroughly disturbing, thoroughly engrossing, almost too engrossing, too real, and you feel dirty after watching it. So it's not a pleasant movie to watch at all. I was as disturbed on this as I was. I can't figure it out why I was as disturbed on this as I was with Exhibit A. Just because of those last 22 minutes. And I guess I was somewhat disturbed throughout the whole movie because of the
behavior of the children. The
behavior of the kids, and me having kids, you know. So I wouldn't exactly recommend that one.
But it's effective.
Yeah, in a lot of ways it's a bad movie, but you can't deny how disturbing it is by the time it gets to the end, that last 22 minutes. Yeah. Then we started, in 2012, we started seeing the popularity of found footage really rise and the bankable concept, and studios realizing it's a bankable concept, we get VHS. It's an anthology film with directors like Ty West, Adam Wingard, who did You're Next, and in 2016 he did Blair Witch, the sequel. And part 2 is directed had directors like Simon Barrett, Eduardo Sanchez from Blair Witch Project, and Gareth Evans, who did The Raid and The Apostle. So
I like these ones a lot because I feel like they're the next step forward for found footage movies. Because what's interesting about the found footage genre is that, like, the idea is that it's discovered footage and it all kind of coheres together in some sort of narrative. I'm surprised that we didn't get like a free form found footage film, which is kind of creepier. The concept of stumbling across a videotape and seeing nothing but a bunch of vile, ugly, disturbing events happen the way that they're sequenced. And because it's in such a way, it kind of disguises the fact that it's an anthology film, because you're not looking at it as an anthology movie. You feel like you're just watching some shit that was spliced together and you don't know where it came from. And all of it's pretty effective. Both of them, particularly part 2, but both of them are pretty effective horror movies.
Yeah, I think part 2 is definitely an improvement on 1, but both of them are really good.
Both good though.
The shorts range from really raw and disturbing to polished and effective. So it's really it's a good example of the found footage subgenre in bite-sized pieces from really creative directors. And it didn't actually, technically launch a lot of these careers, but it did launch a lot of them further. A lot of these directors further in their career and got people to really notice them.
What's cool about it is with using the found footage in the anthology, they were able to get to the meat and potatoes of horror stories that since these are all so short and they look like things you just stumbled upon, strip away like all long story to try to get to the horror. It's just like the money aspects of horror, and I love that. I mean, I love a good story too, but there's something to be said to just going straight to the horror and skipping past the bullshit, so to speak.
Yeah. And I don't know why they couldn't keep that quality going with part 3 or Viral.
Never saw them.
But they aren't even worth discussing. I don't know if they got too cheap. Maybe they offered less money to the directors, so they got lesser talents. But it just didn't hold that same level of quality. Now, later on that year in 2012 came one that still nobody knows about, and I think it's a crime. Children of Sorrow, directed by Jordan McClure. It's about a girl who embeds herself in a cult looking for her sister, and the cult leader is played by Bill Oberst Jr. This one is fascinating to me. This is another one that a lot of people don't like, but they don't like it because of the shaky camera. Now, this is one of those movies that it'll make you motion sick. It'll give you motion sickness if you're inclined to that, because it is too realistic. There's a lot of found footage films where you can't believe that a person is able to, in all this craziness, all this murder and mayhem, that they're able to hold the camera on the action. Now this one is very realistic. When the action happens, the camera is all over the fucking place. But if you just let it in, especially with Bill Oberst as that cult leader, if you just let it in, it's truly disturbing and really effective. I think this is one of the very underrated gems that more people should watch. And that same year, we had a big blow up in like 2011, 2012, 2013, like in the early 2010s. It was a big blast of found footage films. In 2000, another one in 2012 is The Chronicle, which I mentioned before. Not a horror film, but it does feel like it has horror elements. It's a director, Josh Trank, and written by Max Landis.
Let's not go into that.
Pervert, psycho piece of shit. But it's about 3 high school friends who gain superpowers and their lives spin out of control, and one of them turns evil. That's when it gets more of a thriller, horror aspect to it.
It's a pretty good movie.
That was really effective, and it was able to maintain realism, even though it was very fantastical things happening, like boys flying through the air and shit, and picking up cars.
It was only a matter of time before they tried to marry superheroes to found footage at some point. So I guess this is, the attempt to try to get those two subgenres to smash together.
And even though I hate the writer, it's infinitely rewatchable. I've watched that many, many times.
Good movie.
One that I haven't watched quite as bit is Chernobyl Diaries in 2012, also directed by Bradley Parker, who did. I think he was a first-time director on this, but he was a special effects artist who did the special effects on Lake Placid, Fight Club, and on Let Me In, where he did that awesome car crash, which was the best part of the Let the Right One In remake.
Yeah.
And it's co-written by Oren Peli from Paranormal Activity. It's about 6 tourists who pay an extreme tour guide to take them to an abandoned city that was the home of workers from Chernobyl. Now, this is another one that was good enough and effective when I watched it, but just too many others before and after it. It kind of paled in comparison.
But it was relatively popular.
Yeah, it was another theater release.
Yeah.
And the Chernobyl accident was a big thing in the news for years, and it was a kind of a fascinating story, so that's probably another reason why that one got a theater release.
Yeah.
And in the same year, we get The Bay, directed by Barry Levinson. This is when bigger names started getting involved with
found footage.
Barry Levinson directed Rain Man, Jimmy Hollywood with my boy Christian Slater, Sleepers, and it's a documentary style film about an ecological disaster in a small town in Maryland. This is another one, not really found footage, more of a documentary style. And then another one later, and this was 2013, a year later. This is The Sacrament, written and directed by Ty West. It's about a Vice news crew who follows a man to a cult looking for his sister. Gene Jones is amazing. It's another great performance of a cult leader. And it's slow building tension to a really intense climax. This one is more psychologically disturbing, more than what you actually see on screen.
Yeah, I like this one a lot. And it's worth tackling all of Ty West's filmography at some point. But this is definitely one that's really worth watching.
And this is another one. He had done House of the Devil, which is very cinematic. So it didn't seem like he would be able to do such an effective found footage film, but he did.
Did a great job with it, though.
Yeah, mostly because of the acting and his directing and his use of tension really shines on this one.
Yeah.
He took the same thick tension that he had in House of the Devil, and he was able to put it into a found footage movie.
I agree.
That same year, one of my favorites is another one like Megan is Missing, which this is another subgenre of the subgenre, which is movies told through laptops and smartphones. This is The Den, directed and co-written by Zachary Donahue. It stars Melanie Papilia in an amazing performance, who plays a woman who studies the habits of CamChat users and witnesses a murder online, and soon the killer comes after her. This one is genuinely scary. I think it's even scarier than Host, actually, which is another of this type where it's told through a laptop. And just that it's undeniable how great the performance is of Melanie Papilia. This is one of those gems I think every found footage fan should see.
Next up, we have Afflicted on Prime, and it's available on Amazon Prime, correct?
Yeah, and this is one of 3 that came out in a row, like around 2013, 2014. It was wearing a little thin for me. Like I felt like I seen everything in found footage. So we'll discuss them, but this one, Afflicted, Devil's Pass, and Europa Report all came out in 2013, and I haven't seen any of them. But Afflicted is a film from Canada. It's written and directed by Derek Lee and Cliff Prowse. It's about 2 friends that go on a trip, and one of them is struck by a mysterious affliction. and they must find the source before it consumes him.
Yeah. Those
Then,
ones didn't make as much of an impact as some of the other ones on the list.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people were feeling the same fatigue as I was.
Yeah, I think it was the wrong time for those movies.
Yeah, like this is getting a little ridiculous. Like everybody wants to do a found footage film. And then the other one, Devil's Pass. This one I have to see. It sounds really good. It's from Russia and Finland.
Mm-hmm.
It's directed by Rennie Harlan,
Mm-hmm.
who directed Nightmare on Elm Street 4, Adventures of Ford Fairlane, Die Hard 2, Cliffhanger, Deep Blue Sea, and Mindhunters with my boy Christian Slater. It's about a group of students who investigate the site where 9 Russian skiers died. This is one in the snow. It sounds really good. Got high ratings on
IMDb.
So I'm gonna have to watch that one, and we'll discuss that one at length on another podcast. And also this one, Europa Report, directed by Sebastian Cordero. It's about an international crew of astronauts who go on a mission to find life on one of Jupiter's moons. So this one's highly rated, so it might be like a better version of Apollo 18. Sounds like it.
Yeah.
Then same year, 2013, Bobcat Goldthwait threw his hat in the ring with Willow Creek. It's about a couple who goes looking for Bigfoot, and they find him. Now this one, I'm really torn on this one. Really effective, really realistic, has some clever things going on, but just not enough happens.
Yeah, I felt like this one came up short. I'm not really sure that Bobcat Goldthwait's style is the right fit for this type of movie. I just don't think. I think it's just like kind of an awkward marriage between styles that don't mix together.
Yeah, and I think he was using like a real human drama and social commentary, and
I get what he was going for.
Yeah, I think it was trying a little too hard to make it more realistic, and he forgot to make it scary.
Yeah, I agree.
And the parts that are scary in it are very psychological. Like he does one long take. I forget how many minutes the take was, but it's ridiculously long take of just a couple sitting in a tent and them hearing Bigfoot on the outside of their tent. So
kind of trying to do what Blair Witch does, but not quite nearly as effective.
Yeah, I mean, I can't deny how effective some of the psychological elements were, but just like I said, not enough happens in that one.
Mm-hmm.
Another one came up in 2013. 2013 was packed, dude.
I know.
Frankenstein's Army. It's from the Netherlands and the Czech Republic. It's directed and co-written by Richard Raphorst. And it's about toward the end of World War II, Russian soldiers discover a secret Nazi lab in Germany. And this one, it's a little jumbled for me. Not just the camera work, but just the story got a little jumbled and a little convoluted for me. But it does have some really effective scenes. And this Frankenstein's Army is in this Nazi lab, they were doing experiments on soldiers and stuff. So you get a bunch of different designs of soldiers with different mechanisms on their bodies and of masks, and so you get some really good visuals in it, but I don't think it was great overall. It just had some really great moments. And then later on that year is another I thought was an effective comedy. A lot of people don't even take it seriously, and of course it's a goofy ass movie. A Haunted House, directed by Michael Tiddes, co-written by Marlon Wayans and also starring Marlon Wayans. It's actually a spoof of Paranormal Activity. But there's something about it. They do their own thing with it, and there's something about it where it's consistently funny throughout the whole thing. And I think it's elevated a little bit above a spoof, but just because it does enough of its own thing to where it elevates above a spoof of Paranormal Activity. So I thought that one was really good. And another one that I missed, there's 2 more that I missed in 2013 I have not seen yet. Again, this is when I was fatigued, but I had found footage fatigue. The Borderlands from UK, written and directed by Elliot Goldner. It's about a team of Vatican investigators who attempt to debunk unusual events at a remote church and discover that it's real. So that one sounds scary, got high ratings, so I'll have to watch that one and discuss it on a future podcast. And then Where, W-E-R. It's from South Africa and the U.S., directed and co-written by William Brent Bell. It's about a defense attorney who has a client who is charged with murdering a family and discovers something very strange about him. Now, this sounds like the premise to the new Conjuring movie, where a guy was killing people and he ends up being some kind of werewolf demon.
Yeah. See, with all these movies in 2013, I think that combined with the overkill is the reason that most of the, like, even though that's such an active year for found footage, it doesn't seem like any of them had like any profound impact on the genre or the way it went. I think that was like they kind of drowned each other out at a time when people were sick of it all. I think it was just bad timing for that many movies.
Yeah. Now that the exact opposite is true for 2014. Now that there was a big boom of them in 2013, but 2014 is when they really started getting some that stuck. Because I think the fatigue was wearing off and people wanted a really good movie, and these filmmakers came along with really great ones, like The Taking of Deborah Logan, directed and co-written by Adam Robitel, who also did Insidious Last Key, which wasn't that good, and Escape Room this last year, which was pretty good. We'll have to discuss that on another podcast. But it's about an elderly woman with Alzheimer's disease who agrees to let a film crew document her condition, but it ends up being something more sinister, and she turns into some type of monster. And it has that already iconic scene where you kind of they're looking everywhere for the daughter. So the daughter and their daughter and the grandma is missing. So they go down into this weird little basement room, and they turn the corner, and you see the grandma trying to devour the little girl. She's got her mouth completely open, and the little girl is picked up and inside of her mouth. So that was gnarly. So up until that moment, there wasn't really any big outrageous scares or anything. It's really stuck to the realism throughout the whole thing, and then you get this really fantastic
probably
part.
what makes it more effective.
Yeah, exactly. So that one was really good. And later on that year, we got Digging Up the Marrow, written and directed by someone that we both love, Adam Green. It stars Adam Green and Ray Weiss from Twin Peaks, and has monster designed by Alex Pardee. And this is about, it's a fictionalized, Adam Green plays a fictionalized version of himself, and he's contacted by Ray Weiss's character, who says that he knows that there's real monsters in this place called the Marrow. And he invites Adam Green to his place, and he shows him that monsters really exist. And then you get these really impressive monster designs by Alex Pardee. There's a couple problems I had with this one. First of all, I know he was going for realism, but still, with monsters this cool, you could have went a little farther, show them a little more. Because there's a wide variety of monsters, and you can see, like, he did a tour, Adam Green did a tour around the US with this movie, and he took Alex Pardee with him and took a display of his artwork. So you get to see the design of each monster and how impressive the design was. And it makes you really wish you could see more of them. But I do understand he's going for realism. But the other problem I had with this is really impressive and really good movie for fans who don't know Adam Green. Because a lot of it goes through his career and him at conventions and stuff. So it's a lot of stuff us fans are already familiar with. So there's never a point where we can relate to it or feel like it's real, especially with Ray Weiss being in it. There's never an idea that it's real. It's mostly just the cool monster effects. But a lot of the movie is spent getting to know Adam Green, and we already know him. So had a couple problems with it, but overall, still really effective, really good movie. Good performance by Adam Green and good performance by Ray Weiss, of course.
Yes.
Now, later on in 2014, now this is one is As Above, So Below. Directed and co-written by John Eric Dowdle, who I mentioned before did Poughkeepsie Tapes and the Quarantine REC remake. Now this one, I'm kicking myself in the ass for this. I swear I'm going to try never to do this again. I've thought all these years since 2014 that I've seen As Above, So Below. It was The Gallows that I seen. I've seen The Gallows, which is another movie of a group of people going out into some catacombs, but it wasn't that good at all. So I went through all these years thinking, oh, As Above, So Below isn't that good. But holy shit, it's about a team of explorers led by Perdita Weeks as Scarlet and Ben Feldman as George. And they try to discover ancient secrets in the Paris catacombs. Now, this one is another one like Noroi the Curse, which is a very interesting and intricate story, very interesting mystery. And you feel the urgency of the character Scarlet. And this is one of the most badass female characters in recent years. Especially when, first of all, the movie jumps right into it and she's sneaking into Iran to try to find some information on finding this stone in the Paris catacombs. So the information she wants to find is in Iran. So it's instantly intriguing, instantly intense, because she's dropped into a situation where if she's caught, she could be arrested or killed. So it starts right away, and there's a little bit of a paranormal element to it you see while she's in the cave.
Mm-hmm.
But besides that, it's mostly the mystery and then just the passion of this character who's her father's life work was to find this stone in this cave, this secret part of the catacombs. So every time there's an element of danger, she dives in, and you believe her because of her acting. She dives into the danger, brings other people with her. But the most impressive scene is when they go through hell, and it feels like hell to me. I think this is one of the most realistic depictions of hell I've ever seen. It doesn't show a whole lot. It's just the visuals of being in the cave and the lighting and the sounds that are coming out of that cave. It just feels like hell to me. So they go into this literal hell of this cave and almost don't make it out. So when they're almost out, one of the main characters gets injured. So she goes by herself through everything that they just went through to save this guy. And I thought it was really exciting, really realistic. It took very fantastical, crazy elements and gave them an element of realism. And the acting in this is spot on. The two main actors are stellar. All the supporting actors are excellent. That cameraman, when he was stuck in that hole and he couldn't get down, they were climbing over all these skulls and he couldn't get through. I felt the claustrophobia. I felt his panic. And there's several scenes in this movie where you feel like it looks almost too polished to be able to achieve this type of realism, but I thought it did.
Okay, so allow me to contradict you. I didn't like this movie at all. As a found footage movie, I never bought it. It was, like you said, it was like too polished that it never really struck me as realism. I think the acting in this movie is excellent. However, I do not like the main female character. I appreciate what she did at the end, but she struck me for the most part as, I get that she has an important mission going, but the feeling that I got off of it, that she was selfish and more concerned about what she had to do than the people that she brought along, putting people in situations that are pretty awful and then ending them, like things that like she would do something and then you realize it's going to lead to something awful, and it does, and she still continues to operate in the same way. Where more often than not through the movie, she honestly pissed me off and struck me as a little bit selfish and self-centered. Though I get that's part of the movie because it's part of her drive and it's what goes. It's just, I didn't find her particularly likable. The stuff under the ground didn't really scare me that much. It felt all too staged and too mannered, and it looks too nice for a found footage movie for my taste. This is like a pristine looking movie. The way that it's shot and the way that it goes together, where I see a lot of merit in here, and I think there's some like great acting and definitely a lot of skill, but I just felt that for my taste it was too staged for me. Like I felt the effects behind everything for everything that was going on after a while. I think there's some effective moments inside Hell, particularly the one that got me is when the guy sees the car accident. Yeah. With the burning car and stuff like that. That scene actually creeped me out. But for me, there wasn't enough of it for me. I guess it was just something about it. A lot of it just didn't work for my taste.
Well, I can see how the main character Scarlett could come off as selfish and unlikable, but I seen her as like focused like a laser. Like this was
she's definitely focused. I could see the drive.
This was her father's life work, so it had become her life's work. So it was the singular most important thing in her life, and you could feel it in the way she talked, the way she moved, and she was believable every step of the way. But I did get pissed off at her. I mean, I got pissed off at her, from the beginning, especially when she was pushing the character of George. He was deathly afraid of caves. He did not want to go in there. He insisted from the beginning. He did not want to, even when they were about to go down in the hole, he did not want to go. And she was browbeating him into doing it, knowing that his little brother died in a cave like that. And she was still forcing him. So she let her passion for what she was doing and her passion to make this discovery push her to be selfish and to be uncaring but when things happen, even though she causes them to happen, when they actually do happen, she seems to feel genuinely mortified. She does.
And it's just, I also kind of relate to the George character. I've been in positions where I'm trying to help somebody out, but I'm not trying to go all the way to do something. And I've been browbeaten or forced and tricked into doing things, and into a couple of experiences. I'm not naming names, but a couple of experiences where it was kind of like miserable. So I actually know what it's like to be George, and it's frustrating as hell. Or it could be that I latched onto that character because it's the one that I'm most related to, because I've been in similar situations where we all have that friend where, oh, I need you to do so. I'm not going to do all that. Okay, can you just help me with this? Okay, I'll help you with this. But it's always more than just that. It's never just what they say. It's almost like a lot of these friends will say these things that, oh, you're not going to do all that. You're just going to do this, just because they need to get you there to the point where they could trick you into doing it. So it is kind of realistic. I mean, she is a realistic character. Yeah. But I guess it kind of bothered me because I know what it's like to be in the position to being forced into doing things that you had no intention of doing, and to be strung along by friends into situations that you never would have put yourself in yourself. I do feel that she does have empathy because, I mean, for one, the acting is really strong. So when she does seem horrified and mortified, it seems genuine that she is mortified, but there's still a part of me that says, you fucking knew that this was probably going to happen. And you knew it, and you decided that what your work was more important than the lives of your friends. And I think that's what gets me, is that it's not that I don't think that she's genuine in her remorse. It's just not remorseful enough that I think that if it were up to her and she could start it all over, she would make the same decisions all over again.
Yeah. And that's another thing too. Even though she goes through these, genuinely mortified moments where she can't believe that these people got hurt or killed, she still dives into the next one and puts them in danger. Yeah.
So I mean, I might need another rewatch of it, but a lot of what she did sat wrong with me for her as the protagonist. I admire the drive and the laser like focus that she had, and like I said, there's no problems with the acting in this movie at all. All the acting from top to bottom is realistic. It's believable. I don't think any of the performances have like any false note. But like I said, some of it is a little, it's too polished for a found footage movie for my taste. And you have to admit, it's definitely one of the more polished found footage movies out there. One of the shinier looking ones that exist.
That's what impressed me, that it was able to maintain, for me, it maintained a level of realism despite it looking really polished. Now, it's the acting is the main thing that kept me invested. But the other thing was, it was polished for a reason, because this was a professional cameraman that was holding it, and he was genuinely trying to get the best shot. But once he's out of the picture, it's not. That's where I can see where it's not as believable with him, because it's not as believable as some of those characters would be holding that camera facing toward the action. Yeah. When things were happening, it's much more believable when the cameraman had it.
Yeah, makes sense.
But overall, I was very impressed, and I couldn't believe that.
Very well made, that's for sure. It is a well made movie.
So later in that year, was another extremely well-made movie that James and I both loved. It's Creep, directed and co-written by Patrick Bryce and starring Patrick Bryce and Mark Duplass, and they both wrote it together. It's about a young videographer who answers an ad for a one-day job to record the last messages of a dying man. And the guy is literally a creep. We've talked about both of these movies at length, so if you want a detailed discussion, go back and watch those, or watch or listen to those podcasts.
One of the best. Not going to elaborate. The only thing I was going to say, you mentioned earlier, it's hard to make a movie that's cinematic and found footage at the same time. I think this movie pulls it off. I always believe it as found footage every step of the way, but there are some shots and there are some compositions that are so expert that if you really pay attention, you could see how well staged they are, but they manage the trick of making good camera work without ever making it seem like it's fake. So for me, Creep was the best balance between cinematic and found footage.
Yeah, it's really clever, really unnerving without having to use anything visually unnerving.
Yes.
It's psychologically unnerving.
Yep. That's why I like them.
And there's not a bunch of big scares.
Mm-mm.
There's not a bunch of action or anything. It's purely psychological. And then they did part 2 in 2017, which added another element to it, which you know he's a killer, and there's a female documentarian comes to, so it becomes a whole new dynamic, and she kind of matches his creepiness just because of how driven she is. She's so driven and so desperate to make something great that she puts herself into this dangerous situation, and it's I think it's better than the second one in a lot of ways, but in other ways the first one's better. So it's just an excellent film.
I would say that the first one is more of a horror movie than the second one. That's the only, I think that would be the biggest difference. Is I consider them both horror movies, but the first one is a little bit firmer in that standing.
Yeah, just the fact that you don't know for sure if he's a killer or not, and he keeps convincing the videographer that he's legit, and he keeps convincing the viewer too. He keeps doing creepy thing after creepy thing, and he still convinces you that he's legit. Yep. That he's cool. He's just a little weird. Yep. You think he's just eccentric until he's not, and then, of course, that final scene that we talked about at length before, that final scene at the park bench, effective as hell. I've never seen anything quite like it. I've never had a scene make me feel anything quite like that. Yeah. Where you don't think the whole scene, you don't think it's going to happen until it actually does, even though it's pretty obvious what's going to happen. Even though from the beginning of the movie you felt like this is going to happen, it still takes you off guard when it actually does. Yeah. Now, next in 2014 comes another movie that this is one I need to rewatch. This is one I put on part 1 and part 2 both. It's The Houses That October Built. It's directed and co-written by Bobby Rowe. It's about 5 friends who are stalked by a group of menacing individuals while on a road trip to the ultimate haunted house attractions. Now, this one I put it on late at night. It didn't hold my interest enough, so I fell asleep on part 1 and part 2. Okay. I mostly liked it because of the premise, but then later we'll discuss, and a couple of years later, actually a year after that, Hell House LLC. We'll discuss that in a little bit. It's the same premise, but I thought it was handled much better, much more effective. It's scarier. The story's more interesting. Yeah. So to be fair, I need to rewatch The Houses October Built 1 and 2, but a lot of people do seem to like them. So that came out in 2014, 2017. And then the next one is another one told from a laptop, one of the subgenres of the subgenre. It's Unfriended. We had Unfriended in 2014 and Unfriended Dark Web in 2018. So the original one is director Levin Gabriadze. It's about a group of friends who are victimized by a supernatural force that is using the account of their dead friend. And this is another one. We discussed both of these on the podcast. And this is one where I watched Unfriended. I told you to watch it, and it was actually good. and you almost mocked me for for thinking that it was good. And then
I
you watched
liked
it
it.
and came back. You're sure enough, and you liked it so much that you went to see Unfriended Dark Web in the theater.
And I liked it even more
What?
than the first one. And I
Yeah.
liked it even more than the first one. Yeah, I like these movies a lot. I think they're effective, but I kind of feel like they're a cousin to the found footage subgenre. I feel like it's definitely in the same ballpark. But when you're doing like laptop footage or stuff like this, for example, or a Zoom or like Host, as we'll see later, it almost evolves into something different. Like it's the natural evolution of found footage given the type of technology. I don't know if I consider it exactly the same thing, but I feel like it definitely was spawned off of it. It's just going in a different direction, because I feel like the laptop footage aspect kind of invites different kinds of tropes than found footage, where it's somebody walking around with the camera filming it. It kind of almost invents whole new tropes that you don't see in typical found footage movies. So I think we're seeing like kind of like a new branch of what this is with movies like that.
Yeah, and this is another example of great found footage acting.
Mm-hmm.
Where
Yeah.
this is another one where a lot of people came out and said that acting is horrible in that. I don't like that. It's because it's too real. Like I said before, it's the absence of acting that people
No
see.
Oscar performances here.
Yeah, but it's real. I know kids like that. I know kids who talk like that. So 100% real as far as that goes. I thought it was really convincing characters.
Yep.
Not all of them weren't exactly likable, but
Real.
a lot of kids aren't exactly likable.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have likable kids hanging out with the unlikable kids and influencing them in the wrong direction, you know?
Yep.
But that one was really good. Also in 2014, we had director Eduardo Sanchez return to the found footage subgenre with Exists. It's about a group of friends who party in the woods in Texas and they're stalked by Bigfoot. This one was good, solid movie. Not as scary as the Blair Witch, or not as scary as The Fourth Kind. So it's hard to put it up there too far, but really a solid effort from director Eduardo Sanchez. And then in 2015, we had a very interesting one, The Visit, written and directed by M. Night Shyamalan. It's about a brother and sister who stay with their grandparents who slowly become more and more of a menacing threat. Now, this is one that I think it had to be good.
Mm-hmm.
For M. Night Shyamalan's career to continue at that point, he had too many flops in a row, too many movies that had pissed people off, and they had lost faith in him. All the studios had lost faith in him. He wasn't getting a budget anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So the obvious direction to go was found footage, something he could do cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
But it had to be good in order for him to keep his career. I think if this had not been as good as it was, that he would have just fallen into obscurity.
Yeah.
But it was just effective enough, just real enough, just creepy enough, just original enough to keep him in the game until he did Split.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
And then we got what I mentioned a few minutes ago. In 2015, the Hell House LLC. It ended up being a trilogy. All three films are written and directed by Stephen Cognetti. It's an unexplained malfunction in a haunted house tour at the Abaddon Hotel kills 15 tour goers. So then the movie starts with a documentary crew who tries to find out what happened. And as you go along through, one is genuinely scary, a really good example of found footage, just the acting wasn't there.
Mm-hmm.
Everything was there but the acting on the first one. And then I watched it once, and then the ending got really jumbled. Too many characters, too many cameras. I didn't know who was where. I didn't know who had the camera, so it got a little confusing. But on a second watch, when I knew who had the camera, it was much more exciting, much scarier. I thought 2 was definitely scarier than the first one. Had some deeply scary moments, and then part 3 had some really good moments, but it's mostly story. And mostly bringing the story around full circle. So I really like this whole trilogy. I love when a writer-director has a singular vision that he carries out through 3 movies, because I think it's really an accomplishment to do that.
Only saw the first one, and I had mixed feelings about it. I loved some of it and didn't like some of it. That's necessary.
And one thing I think made part 2, which wasn't until 2018, and then part 3 was 2019. 2018 was the scariest and the best out of the 3 because it had the best acting.
Oh, okay.
But another thing that I love about this, you see the characters in the first one appear in the hotel as ghosts in the second one, and then in the third one you see characters that died in part 1 and 2 pop up in the haunted house. So it's I think it's a very effective story, very effective found footage films, and very effective film about people going into a haunted attraction and it being real. And I thought it was better than the Houses October built. And then in 2015 is what we were just talking about. We just talked to the writer-director earlier, Be My Cat, a film for Anne. We talked about this one at length, both when we analyzed it and when we interviewed him.
Check it out.
Great movie, very realistic, one of the most realistic found footage films out there, and disturbing without having to go for a bunch of gore.
Exactly.
And another one that I slept on came up in 2016. It's called They're Watching. It's available on Prime. So this is another one that we'll come back and discuss when we watch it. It's a joint production from U.S. and Romania, like Adrian.
Yeah.
It's written and directed by Jay Lender and Mika Wright. It's about an American home improvement show renovates a home in an Eastern European village and face the villagers' superstitions, misunderstandings, and bloody violence. And that one seems like it has a comedic atmosphere to it. So that one looks like it's going to be a comedy horror. So that one looks really good. And another one by, I don't know if you know him too, I'm friends with him on Facebook, a director, Stephen D. Gennaro, did Found Footage 3D in 2016. I need to rewatch this one. It's about a group of filmmakers set out to make a 3D found footage movie, but the evil entity from the movie escapes into the behind the scenes footage. I need to rewatch this. I liked it. It's a solid film. It's a good idea. But I don't know if it was scary enough. I don't know if it was real enough. So I need to watch that one again to get a proper opinion on it. And another one, it's interesting. It's not really a notable found footage film. It's The Monster Project from 2017, directed by Victor Mathieu. It's about a recovering drug addict takes a job with a documentary crew who sets out to interview 3 people in an old mansion who claim to be real monsters: a skinwalker, a vampire, and a demon. Now, the reason why I wanted to mention this one, it's a really small movie. A lot of people haven't heard of it, but it does have its flaws. It's realistic for the most part, but it gets too involved in the drama between the characters. There's a kind of a fractured love story that's in there.
Yeah.
It goes a little bit too deep into that. But holy shit, when they show the monster scenes, it's really a panic-inducing movie when it comes to the monster attacks. Like everything else surrounding it is very flawed. But once these monsters start attacking, you really feel like it's a skinwalker chasing someone. You feel like it's a vampire chasing someone. So watch this one just for the impressive attack scenes, and it's definitely scary. Okay, and one of the best ones that we watched cramming this week is Gonjiam, Haunted Asylum. It's from Korea, directed and co-written by Byung-sik Leong. It's about a crew of a horror web series explores an abandoned asylum and slowly realize the paranormal reports are real.
This is one that I feel like shouldn't have worked at all. There's so much about what's in here that I feel is kind of tacky, like the things that they do. Like, I think he even messaged me, like the tricks that they do in getting up in people's faces, or like getting up in people's faces and like whispering things and making like weird shit, where if I were just to read what was described, I probably thought it sounded ridiculous or not something I'd be interested in watching. I'm surprised how all of these crude methods worked as well as they did for this movie.
Yeah, because it felt like a low budget movie. It had the spirit of a low budget movie. Like people with a low budget doing very inventive things. But you had this amazing camera work because you had the technology. Now it's 2018. The technology allows them to do a cheap movie with very expensive equipment that adds another layer of realism to the movie, which is the cameras around their neck, which has a camera facing their face and facing outward at the same time. So at any point during the movie, you can get the POV of any of the characters if you want. And then when the supernatural stuff starts pretty quickly, and then it's this really campy show, and they're all acting silly, like they're silly millennials. It's like trying to make a snappy, upbeat, clever, and like cool, like trying to be a little too cool. But then when the horror hits, all that shit goes out the window, and they don't give a fuck about they want to get the fuck out of there, you know?
Yeah.
But all the paranormal chaos was really good, especially when the one character gets possessed. So then you get to see a possessed character up close and personal while they're chasing around their friends. And I really got the feeling of a genuine panic that your friend is attacking you.
Yeah. Definitely really effective. I questioned it for a lot of the time while I was watching it, whether or not it was good. But I think once the horror hits, it kind of becomes clear that the method that they used actually worked. And I was kind of annoyed by most of the characters at first because they behave in such a millennial fashion. But when the horror hits, it kind of makes it seem more real because you feel like you've just been watching a bunch of obnoxious kids for a while. So it makes it kind of seem real. So a lot of the things that I would think wouldn't work, or normally wouldn't work, ended up working very well in this movie for me. And I love the use of shadows in the dark. Yeah.
And this is effective in the same way I think that Grave Encounters is. Okay. Like you start out, it's not exactly likable characters. They think what they're doing is fake, and they're just trying to make something outrageous and something that people will watch on TV or on the internet. So it almost comes off as disingenuous, you know, where you feel like it's almost staged. Yeah. But then you see it change. And I think the same thing happens with Grave Encounters. With this one, it was even more snappy and hip and modern. Yeah. Where the characters came off even more douchey than on Grave Encounters. Yeah. But that's who they were. That's the show they were trying to make. But when the horror comes, I think it's very effective. Yep. But I love the drone shots. So you get these very impressive, very detailed drone shots, because as the years go along, the higher tech cameras get cheaper and cheaper. So you're able to see really crisp, clear images in a very obviously low budget movie. Yeah. And then the final one we're mentioning is one we've discussed a couple times in the last few podcasts, Host from 2020. This is another one told on laptops, directed and co-written by Rob Savage. About 6 friends hire a medium to do a seance on Zoom during a lockdown. Really effective, and it's part of the part of the unfriended dark web sub-genre of found footage, and I think it's going to lead into the future, especially now that COVID is a thing, the quarantine. I think we're probably going to be getting more Zoom horror at some point because of this movie. Yeah, and it's also worth mentioning that there's also a lot of movies that we didn't mention today, because we mentioned mostly just found footage and faux documentaries, but there's also another subgenre where filmmakers take found footage and use it to add it to their cinematic film, to add a level of realism, or to use that trope for scares. I actually did it in my first 2 short films. In Stab Awake, there was a found footage element to it where we see part of the movie through one of the characters' video cameras. And then in the Campsite, there's actually a found footage element to it too, because carnage happens at the campsite, and you don't know exactly what happened until 2 campers come up and see the footage, and then they look back and see what happened at that campsite. So it's greatly influenced me in my work, And it's done the same for a lot of other filmmakers who add that aspect as another way to milk some scares and also add some realism.
Yep. So that was our history of found footage, as well as a little discussion with Adrian Tofei.
And please let us know if we missed any, because
we did.
I studied the shit out of this, and it really bothers me when I miss some. So please let us know any that we missed so we can discuss them on a later podcast.
Yeah. So check us out. We're going to do 2 more of these special podcasts, and then we're going to finish up on Halloween with a review of the entire Halloween franchise. Follow us on Facebook.com/Pickles Horror Show, on Instagram.com @Pickles Horror Show. We also have a Flow page. It has a link to all of our pages. I'm going to leave that in the description of the podcast, so you can either copy and paste it if you want to check it out, or you could just click on it and it'll lead you to our Flow page. It's been a good one. Till next week, folks. Happy horror.